Welcome back to the Carp Angler Chronicles podcast. This is episode number 22, which is a lucky number for some people, but unfortunately it wasn't lucky for us. We recorded a part 2 interview with Shaun Harrison, and unfortunately some kind of voodoo happened and the audio is just not very good quality. Pete's audio is absolutely fine, Shaun's is okay, my audio is just not sounding great at all, so apologies about that. It's still very listenable too, you won't struggle with it I don't think, but it's just not quite up to our usual high standard of audio, so apologies about that. One last thing before we lead into the interview with Shaun. If you haven't already, please go ahead and leave us a review on your podcast app. Everyone that leaves us a review will be entered into a prize draw and you could win £100 worth of really cool carp paraphernalia. So if you haven't left us a review already, go ahead, leave us a review. Doesn't matter if you leave us a review the first day that we started or the last day before we announce the winner. Everyone will be entered into that prize draw and you can win some really, really cool stuff, to be honest with you. So please go ahead and do that. If for whatever reason you can't leave a review on the podcast app that you use, most of them you can nowadays, but if you can't, then go ahead to our YouTube channel, leave us a review on there. Everyone will be entered in and you'll be in with a chance of winning all of the goodies. Without further ado, let's lead into the interview. Shaun, welcome back to the podcast. What is your tipple of the episode, my man?
The tipple is the Glen Marnock, which is a new one for me. It's one that Audi are selling at the minute. It's got a nice peaty taste to it. I quite like a peaty whiskey. And that's what I've got poured in the glass. Not started it yet, but it's there.
Beautiful. I saw your picture on Instagram earlier. It looked like Macallan bottle from the side. I don't know if you've had a Macallan, Scottish whiskey.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't face an Audi one straight to the camera, would you? So I twisted it on its side.
What you did there. I see what you did there.
But, no, it's a nice drink, and it's very, very affordable. So,
yeah. Beautiful. I can't get into the peaty ones myself. I just find them way too much. Really can't.
No, I had a Talisker bought me originally, and I didn't realise I was into peaty ones until I had that, and I just like the peaty whiskies now.
Yeah. Talisker's very peaty as well, isn't it?
Yeah. It's an acquired taste, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, and Pete is with us. What are you guzzling tonight, Pete?
I'm not guzzling. I'm being very sensible. I'm just having one tonight, maybe two. But tonight I've gone for a Krabby's original ginger beer. Haven't had one for a long time. Bit wintry. Why not?
That's two more than last time. I think you was on the Coca-Cola last time.
That's right, Shaun. Yeah, but yeah, no, you're very right. I was plugged up at work last time.
Yeah, plugged up at work. I think you said you'd escaped the kids. Was more to the point.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, very true. And yourself, Sam? What's your tipple tonight?
Well, I'm going light tonight. I've only got 4 beers. I've got 2 Doom Bars and 2 Old Speckled Hens. So pretty basic ales. Nothing too flashy. Right. Well, it was all the way back in May that we last had you on, Shaun. And obviously we were in the midst of the first lockdown. As we record this, we're towards the end of the second lockdown. It's currently the 24th of November. What has been happening in your world of angling, Shaun?
Still been getting out the weekends. I'm a weekend angler. Been doing 2 nights each week whenever I've been able to. I mean, this second lockdown has been much easier with us still being allowed back out on the bank now. The first lockdown, I found it very difficult. Just not being able to get out. I was isolating, working from home, so I was never able to escape the walls. Thought at the time it was the angling that I was missing, but in reality, I was having lots of trouble sleeping, which I don't usually struggle with. In the end, snuck off out into the garden in the area out the way, had a night outdoors and slept incredibly. So I actually ended up with a little den in the garden in the end. And I think that got me through lockdown. As ridiculous as it sounds, I realised it was the fresh air and the wind on my face that I was missing more than the angling.
It's weird, isn't it? How you just, when you get out in nature, you feel better. Like I think I said to you earlier, Shaun, I did a two-nighter last week, which for me these days is quite a lot. I just do quick overnighters, but I did 2 nights on the trot last week. Well, it might have been the week before actually, and I just came back honestly a different person, like probably a nicer person, more patient, more relaxed. I think just being out there for a sustained period of time definitely does something to you. It's probably something we should all do more of.
Well, I think there's something to be said for the just simplicity of fresh air. You're not breathing in the same regurgitated air, with air conditioning and everything else nowadays. It's, everybody's breathing the same stuff all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I live in the countryside. I get out most days. I definitely, I dread to think where I'd be if I didn't do that. I guess as well, just being around nature and just kind of unwinding and getting I mean, there's so many different things flying at us in the day to day, isn't it? I mean, I know you've got your own office for your different businesses, Shaun. The emails forever pinging off, and then it's the phones ringing, and then your mobile phones going. And I think sometimes maybe just to get away from all that, and it's just you and the nature, and you take everything in, and you just kind of stop a little bit. I think that it must
definitely
be positive. It must do.
You need to be able to lock a door at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the problems when you try and work from home, is you never get away from it.
Yeah. You got a home office, right?
Yeah. I try and do most from home. But I certainly did all through lockdown. I've got health issues, so I was being extra careful to keep out of the way of everybody and do what we were supposed to be doing. Still to this day, I'm still limited to just one shop a week, and that's the only time I really mix with people, other than the obvious telephones and such like.
Sounds perfect to me. I think the older I get, I just don't.
I enjoy my own company, but it's it's two-sided. It's got its good points. It's got its other points.
Yeah.
But I think once you're forced to lock down and not do anything, that's when you realise that how many people you normally do mix with. When you think you're living a relatively solitary life, until you have to, you don't quite realise just how much you are.
Yeah. In terms of your angling, since the first lockdown was lifted, did you go out all guns blazing, or did you ease back?
No, it's everywhere was very busy, as you probably appreciate, and I tried to fish the local, which was a little bit too busy for me. But saying that, I think first trip back I started with a 38 common and a 34 common brace within an hour. Nice. So came back quite spectacular. But it was just too busy for me. I was turning up and I was having to take whatever swim was left and everything else. So I ended up escaping to one of the quieter syndicates and spent most of my summer on there. Had a great time, caught some lovely fish. No sort of absolute monsters, but it's not really the be all and end all to me. The important thing to me is where I'm doing it and how I'm doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Do you have, I mean, are you particular about the strains that you fish for? I understand what you're saying. You want it to be a nice venue. I'm exactly the same. Do you like fishing for certain type of fish, quote unquote old fish, or are you just happy if
not particularly old ones? There's types of carp I prefer to catch, but again, that isn't the be all and end all. The important thing for me is the venue and the methods needed on the venue. If I can get that right and enjoy the way that I'm doing it, not too many people about, I'll be happy for a fat round mirror or a long slim common. No, it's the fish aren't the major thing with me. It's the experience. It's the actual doing it and trying to make that as enjoyable as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, aside from fishing, anyone that follows you on social media will see the vast array of open flame stoves that you have, for want of a better phrase. You're obviously massively into the kind of primal cooking style. Not to mention, all the different dishes that you cook up. How did you get into that side of your bank life?
I've always been into cooking on the bank, and well, saying that, I suppose when I upped the levels up was the first time I became single. Because I could fish 4 nights a week, I started fishing 4 nights a week, and suddenly the diet went downhill rapid. It was the old chip shop on the way, or sandwiches from the garage, or a Chinese, or whatever. And I soon found I was still doing 5-day-a-week job and everything. I was still employed and everything else, but I was spending 4 nights a week on the bank. And after 2 or 3 weeks of it, I was just worn out. I was just feeling really down and everything else, thinking I was pushing it too much on the fishing side of things. And somebody commented about diet and food, and started trying to cook on the bank what I'd normally be eating at home, and everything improved. So sort of since that day, I've spent quite a lot of attention to what I'm cooking, what I'm doing, rather than the easy cheese sandwich and everything. I try and cook the same as I would do any other time. As years have gone on, it's like a lot of things, same as angling. You things get a little bit repetitive at times, and in the angling, I've occasionally do things and make things a little bit more difficult or spice it up a little bit. Sometimes I'll go and just limit myself to using centerpin reels, or sometimes play about with cane rods and things. And very much with the cooking, I just started making it more difficult and decided quite a few years ago I was going to see if I could just cook on sticks and nothing else, sticks, twigs and things, anything I could forage. And that's basically what I do to this day. I actually get a kick out of the fact that, I'm not having to buy fuel.
Yeah.
Just pick a few twigs up and you've got a meal, which also cuts down what you're carrying with you as well.
Yeah, so I was going to ask whether it was just a traveling light thing. I didn't think that was the case because I've seen your gear. I don't think you travel. No. So is it just the thrill of sort of gathering some moss and some kindling, etc.?
Yeah, I suppose it's the kid in me and everything. Really, I used to light fires as a kid when I shouldn't do, but I just light fires and I like the smell of smoke, and I just get a big kick out of the fact that I can produce a meal just over things I've picked up without putting myself out.
Yeah.
Generally it's 10 paces away from the swim, and there's plenty to burn on most of the water fish.
Have you ever been out and I don't know, maybe it's been peeing down for a long time? Have you ever been caught short on kindling and wood to find?
I do carry an emergency bag in the Land Rover, but it's very rare it ever gets attacked. If you look up in most trees, there's always dead branches. They're always dry. If they're wet on the outside, they're only wet on the top where the rain's hit them. They're always dry underneath. But a quick scrape of the bark and you've got dry wood.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
It's the number one thing everyone says, well, what about when it rains? But I've never ever not been able to cook over twigs.
And I mean, we won't go on about this for a long time because I know most people are here for the angling side, but I'm quite interested. Believe it or not, I've been looking at stoves. In fact, I started looking at them ages ago when I wanted to do some touring on a bike. What would you say is the things to look out for? Because I was shocked at how many of these small portable wood fueled stoves there are. What should we look out for?
The most compact, smallest, flattest, most versatile one I've used is the Bushbox XL. They look quite a lot of money for what they are, but it's another one of those things. If something happened to mine, I'd buy another one tomorrow straight away. Yeah, I put off buying one for a long while. But the beauty of those, obviously you burn your twigs on them or coals, whatever you want to burn. But I actually carry a very small Trangia stove with me, little paraffin burner. You can pop one of those in there, and if you can't be bothered to look for twigs or one of the venues of fish, there's a couple of swims where you can't really get near the trees, and they're very strict about being off your rods. So I just drop the Trangia in it then. And again, Trangia, they're tiny little things, so they don't take any carrying, but you've always got an emergency backup.
What always worries me about the Trangias is getting the meth on your hands and that tainting my bait.
I said that to a lot of people for a lot of years. Yeah. Well, I don't actually use meth, to be fair. I use what do you call it? A bite from B&Q, a clear liquid. There's hardly any smell on it anyway, but I just don't seem to get it on me either, and I'm as clumsy as they come. But I don't like mess. Mess does linger, and you can always smell that.
Yeah.
Is it bioethanol? I'm just trying to think what it is now. But it's just clear liquid, like I say. It's much cheaper than mess as well. But you can buy it in bottles from B&Q.
You had a little stove with a robin on it on your Instagram maybe a week ago. It looked like you had a little container of, well, not mess obviously, but some kind of combustible liquid in there. What was that? Yeah,
that was the bush box, which I normally burn twigs in, but that had a Trangia inside it.
Okay.
Can you buy sort of purpose-built like solid fuels for them? And I only ask because I've ordered myself one for my kids to give me for Christmas, to be honest.
Right.
It's like the bush box, but I think it says Lixada. It's a copy.
Yeah, it's a little bit thinner metal, that one. So.
That's it. Yeah, but it's like a tenner delivered to your door from eBay. I've seen some people using sort of like purpose-made sort of like a solid fuel. Is that something you've used before?
You can buy it, but I just, like I say, I've never found it a problem picking up twigs. So, it's just not a route I've gone down, but I know people do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do if I'm grilling, if I'm cooking something that's going to be taking quite some time, I add a couple of barbecue charcoals to the fire pit occasionally. They just hold the heat a lot longer. You're not feeding quite so much, but that's about the only time I ever use anything that's artificial, to be fair.
Yeah, and charcoal's not too artificial. It's not exactly cheating, is it?
No, to be fair, I normally buy the briquettes, but yeah. So they're not quite the same as a normal burnt wood. But you can anything that'll burn, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, beauty of the burning over twigs or whatever, I get very little rubbish because most of it I just burn.
Exactly, yeah, and it's gone.
It's amazing how much rubbish does totally disappear.
No, absolutely. Is bushcraft? Is it stemmed from fishing? Would you sort of say that you're a bushcraft hobbyist? Is it like a separate hobby to your fishing, or has it always been sort of amalgamated?
No, I've always combined the two, but there's a massive bushcraft community out there. There's lots of people do that, and I think a lot of them make great carp anglers. They've got the natural outdoorsy type of attitude. They hunt things down, they find things. But it's a crossover thing, really. I enjoy the bushcraft side as much as I enjoy the fishing.
Mm-hmm. What I always like from your Instagram shots is you've always got your meal set out on its platter, and you've got an Opinel penknife, which is something I always had as kids. My dad's always bought me an Opinel knife. I don't know why, he just has. But yeah.
One of the easiest knives in the world to sharpen.
Yeah, that's true, because I'm rubbish at sharpening knives. I don't have a problem with an Opinel.
And again, they're very cheap as far as knives go.
Yeah, I guess so. I've still got mine one of mine from a child. I got it out the other day, and I was always in my tackle bag, and everything's got wet a few times recently, and I've just sort of left it in its pouch. And it's all seized up, so I've given it a little lick of oil and sort of given it a bit of TLC, I guess. But it's one of those things I've had for a long, long time, and quite sentimental now.
Yeah, you shouldn't bring them back. I had the one that you normally see in my pictures. That was seized up at the weekend, to be fair. I had to sort that out on the bank. But a little bit of coconut oil on it, soon sorted that.
That's it, yeah, all sorted.
I've just bought one.
Right. It sounds like I'm talking to a couple of clones here.
Weird.
No, it's not. I get a lot of PMs, obviously, as you would do, and it's been quite nice. I didn't used to put many cooking type pictures up. It was just something that I did, and I started sharing a few of them and some of the kit I use. And I seem to get more likes on that now than do on the angling ones. So, well, you'll have seen this last year or so. I've been pushing that side quite a bit more. But it's amazing how many people come in contact, just asking about things and wanting to know where to get everything from. So it's, I ought to have shares really with Pernell and Bush Box and Kelly Kettle and various others.
And what was you've got it looks like a smoker. I don't know if it is a smoker or not. Sort of like a big barrel barbecue you've got as well with the big chimney.
Oh, the wood burner, yeah. It's quite a new thing for me, that one. But it's brilliant. Absolutely love that. It's a bit over the top if you've got to do much walking or whatever. It's quite a heavy thing, but you get it in the barrel and it's all right. But it's something I've always wanted. It's a log burner.
Yeah,
I'd wanted one as much for use at home as out on the bank, but on the swims where I can get it to the swim easily. It's just brilliant. You got a permanent hot plate. Normally brew up in the mug. I just use steel mugs, but you do the same with the kettle. You just leave it on, and you've got constant boiling water.
Yeah. And is that something you can use to sort of keep yourself warm? I know it sounds daft, but is that something you could have sort of like the entrance to that in the main body of it in the entrance to the brolly?
They're actually made for tents anyway. It's a side of camp in which they call hot tent in, and you actually have it in the tent with you, and the pipe out the material.
Okay, yeah, cool.
And the way it's suited as well, because I've got an anti-spark thing on it, so there's no fear of sparks dropping on the bivvy or anything. You can, bivvies are tiny compared to the tent, so you can actually face it into the bivvy, have it inside the bivvy with the chimney outside anyway, if you wanted. I've not actually used it for that yet. I didn't get it until, back end of this summer. But it's lovely on the evening, just watching the flames flickering away through the glass door.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Glass door I can face myself, and it's amazing how psychologically warm it is without even feeling the heat. Just seeing that flickering away. And it's not giving loads of light off, so you're not, I've always been a bit paranoid with lights in the past. But no, it's just a nice bit of kit. It takes the pee a little bit, really, but that's me altogether. I just don't like to fit in. I like to do my own thing.
That's it. It's whatever floats your boat as well. If you're getting your enjoyment from it, then so be it. Have you got any other sort of tips with your bushcrafty type things with keeping yourself warm when it comes into the winter months?
One thing I've found after a lot of years of messing about with a lot of different clothing is I find it incredible in this day and age with all the advancements we've had and everything, but still the warmest things are wool. I tend to wear a merino wool base layer. Merino wool socks I wear all year long, and I don't seem to suffer with the sweaty feet or the cold feet or anything anymore like I used to.
No.
It's the animals got it sorted years ago. We keep coming up with all these various acrylics and fleece and this, that and the other. None of them are as warm as wool. And if you're doing the bushcrafty type thing with bits of fire everywhere, it doesn't burn.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
I got some merino wool socks a couple of weeks ago, and they are all. I mean, I probably
Yeah,
got, but they're awful. They really are. They've
yeah.
misshaped already, and they're not too good. Do you
You
get
washed them too hot.
30? Really? No.
Oh, no, I wash mine at 30.
Yeah,
We sound like old women now, aren't we, discussing
we are.
washing?
I think.
But no, I guess it depends the types I mean, if you look, the majority of merino wool things are blended with something else. So I guess
I
it
was going to
could
ask if
be
there's a percentage.
percentages and everything.
Yeah.
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 I know a lot of people go on about bamboo clothing these days, but they put merino wool in that. So I think a lot of people are sort of rediscovering things that's already been discovered.
Yeah.
It sounds like carp angling, really, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're not wrong there. How many on that note? How many years is it that you've been carp angling now?
Caught the first one in 1977. That was an accidental capture, to be fair, but that started me off carp fishing. I didn't want to do anything other than catch carp at that time. I mean, I do fish for all species again now, but it totally turned my life around. I think I might have touched on it before. I had 3 the first time I ever caught any. I was chub fishing on the Trent, but all 3 was in the snow. So the thing a lot of people aim to do, the ambition of a lot of carp anglers is a carp in the snow. My first 3 were in the snow.
Talk about peaking. Yeah. So that was 43 years ago, right?
Yeah, 43 years. Yeah.
So, I mean, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, obviously, winter because it was snowing, so it would be 43. Yeah.
Yeah, 43 years. I mean, me and Pete have been carp angling for probably half of that, and we've had some incredible stories to tell. What standout stories have you had happen to you in those 43 years of angling for carp?
Oh, you put me on the spot there. I was only saying to someone the other day, there can't be many sports where you can have so many highs in one thing. If you like a football player or whatever, you get to the World Cup and you score a goal, and you've done it then, haven't you? You're going to struggle to do that one again. But in carp angling, there's just so many top achievements you can do. From water to water, you can have the biggest. You can have big hits of fish, and you have your biggest one in the snow, in the sand. There's just so many highs in it.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, in those 43 years of angling, I mean, you must have had some eventful angling trips. I know you once told me about when you went to France for the first time, to Cassian and
oh yeah, that was an adventure. It was 1985. I went to Cassian first, and it was a time when the UK carp anglers didn't travel overseas to catch carp. There'd been Paul Regent had been over there. I always remember him appearing in the press with a 37-pound mirror from Cassian, and that got everyone interested, which is quite laughable nowadays when you look at weights of fish. He started doing coach trips over there. There was a couple of other early pioneers who made the trip themselves, and one of them was a chap called Don Smith, who used to have a company called Better Baits. And I can remember him having a 55-pound. A friend of mine was with him, Paul Dickinson. He'd had a 55, which was a phenomenal fish. Then I might be wrong now, but I'm pretty sure he went back about 3 weeks later and had a 62, they were mind-boggling fish back then. We decided on spur of the moment to go down, and it was right in the first couple of months of anyone going there, really. But we started getting, there was all these rumours of problems on Cassian. You weren't supposed to be night fishing, and people were having tackle confiscated from them. There was having guns pointed at them and such like, and it was all presumed to be the police. I remember at the time there was people saying, "Oh, it's a load of nonsense, not happening." It was happening, and we was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. We lasted 2 or 3 days. They had to come back. We ended up middle of the night. We got raided. Okay, we weren't supposed to be night fishing. We'd been sleeping in the car park first 2 nights, but on the third day, started getting light and it started looking like something was going to happen. We stayed there. Then middle of the night, there were searchlights. There were dogs barking. There was gunfire going in the water around us. We'd left everything in the boat so we could get away quick. And we basically got out of the way and came home the following day. I was in Shapier's the following morning. I had a breakfast before we got sorted, and he had a phone call asking if the English anglers were still there. So we made a hasty retreat. My start of French fishing wasn't, well, it was spectacular, but it didn't come off the right way, really. And it did put me off travelling for a long while after that. In hindsight now, looking back, it wasn't the police at all. It was locals dressing up as police and basically confiscating tackle from people and putting people off.
Yeah, and you said it wasn't a rare occurrence to get a gun shoved in your face.
No friend of mine. He'd been on his hands and knees with a gun at him, and a dog took it away at him. Yeah, scared him to death.
Oh, crikey!
But that all seems to have been forgotten about as well. I mean, there was quite a lot of stories from quite a few different people in the real early days of it, but you never hear those tales mentioned anymore.
No.
Like I say, it was enough to stop me sort of even thinking about going overseas for years after that. And we start on quite a lot, really.
What year was it you first went over there?
1985.
85. Yeah, you just said that.
Yeah.
What year was the Kevin Ellis fish?
It was afterwards. So it wasn't long after, I don't think. It'd be 87, 88, something like that. Yeah. Seems to remember that the weights had gone from 62, then Kevin Ellis. Oh no, Max Cottis had a 68, didn't he? Then Kevin Ellis had a 72 from memory.
I remember it was I think it was the I was a kid, but I think it was the Kevin Ellis fish that really put Cassien into the limelight, wasn't it?
No, it was there well before that, to be fair.
Ah, okay.
Like I say, Max Cottis, I don't know if it was the first 60 or not. It was certainly the first one I'm aware of the UK angler having.
Right.
But I might be talking wrong there. Like I say, it might have been Don Smith had a 62. Max had a 68, I think. Then the next big one I was aware of was Kevin Ellis's 72.
Right, okay.
But yeah, monstrous fish, but they were a little bit after. Can you remember the big catfish being caught at Cassien? It was always reported as £200. The press always referred to it as £200. I was there when that was caught. Johnny Allen had it. He was fishing with Richie McDonald. But they too, they came away with us that same time, the same night we were raided. There were three of us. There was Richie McDonald, John Allen, and Jeff Shaw. We were the six anglers who was on the lake, basically, but we all ended up coming away together.
Wow. Yeah, don't blame you.
The Kevin Ellis fish was that was 86. And this is where I show my youth, I guess, compared to you guys a little bit, because that was the year I was born.
Right.
So it's a little bit before my time. But the way I've always perceived sort of like Cassien was like the Kevin Ellis fish was the one that really sort of sparked the big sort of the drives of Europe, of English anglers going over to Europe. But as you were saying before, there was a plenty of big captures that had already started it off.
Yeah, I think that the Kevin Ellis one, by that stage, there was more people doing it and people realising that it was something that you could do. You know, it wasn't one of these things like going into the middle of Africa in the jungle. You know, it was when we first went down there, we didn't have a clue about it really, other than there'd been a couple of big fish caught. I know it took us 24 hours to get there. got lost en route, but I think it was 1,000 miles from Usdor to actually pulling up at the lake. But it would just, nobody did it, but after a year of a few people having a go at it, it was the problems were ironed out basically, and it just made it a bit easier for everybody.
Yeah, completely different world back then.
But you've also got to remember the motors as well. That I remember the transit van that Richie and Johnny Allen was in. You could see the road through the floor. They've got buckets patching holes up. It's. I mean, nowadays I think about it a little bit. When I was a kid, when we used to go on holiday, we'd perhaps go to Cornwall or whatever on holiday, and Dad would be servicing the car for 2 weeks leading up to it. Yet nowadays, just get in a car and expect it to go wherever you want it to go. But it was a bit different back then.
Yeah, they've almost got a shelf life now as well, haven't they? Cars, they don't last as long as the old ones. Or, for example, your Landy. I can imagine, talking of patching cars up with buckets, your Land Rover's probably got a bit of character to it.
Well, yeah, I've had a few of them over the years. So yeah, some of them have. I mean, one of them I had 15 years. That was a different motor, really, by the time I sold it again. But I think in the 15 years I had it, I lost 1,500 quid on it when I sold it. So it didn't do too bad with it.
No, it'd probably be worth a lot more now. They're like collector's items now. They're out of production.
Yeah, the new one doesn't look like a Land Rover at all to me, but hey-ho. But going back to the car scenario, and now, we talk about, I mentioned about reliability and such like. My first vehicle, the first bit of travelling I used to fish the Essex area, which would be 150, 170 mile each way from where I lived. But I used to have to fill the van up with oil halfway just to get there. Then fill it up again when I got there. I used to fill it up again on the way back. And, it's things that's quite laughable now. I mean, they shouldn't have been on the road, but the MOTs were just so different to how they are now.
No, that's it. I remember that my first car had the old pull-out choke, and you had to stick a load of pegs on it to sort of keep it going. But yeah, that's it. So I guess sort of back to carp fishing. I know, Shaun, that you put out some questions to some of your followers on social media, and they came back with some suggestions. And one of them was sort of like with winter fishing, and how you sort of change your approach, specifically with bait and maybe a change in hook baits.
Hook baits, I don't alter an awful lot. Anyway, hook bait for me is normally the smallest bait in the swim. I try and feed with bigger baits than what I use on a hook bait. It's very, very, very rare I use anything other than a bottom bait, which seems to surprise a lot of people. Summer or winter, like I said, I don't really alter it. I use bottom baits. To my mind, it's something I say a lot. The fish's only enemy is us. And why on earth you'd want your hook bait to stand up and look obviously to be a hook bait? It just beats me. Yeah, so many just seem to have pop-ups on or wafters or whatever else, but every single safe bait the carp ever eats is hard on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always feel more confident with a bait on the deck. Does presentation not sort of bother you in certain circumstances, or is that something you'll only fish in an area where it's sort of like a clean bottom? Or say if it was a bit silty, a bit choddy, or in some sort of low-lying weed, is that sort of thing not affecting you too much?
No, I love fishing in siltweed, and again, it's something a lot of people seem to avoid, but I love siltweed. There's more food in that than I ever see in any other sort of weed. The only difference I make with siltweed is I crush the barb down. I fish barbless so that the hook can still go in okay. I don't like barbless hooks. I always use barbed if I can use barbed, but in siltweed, I just crimp the barb down.
Mm-hmm.
If you play about in the edge with siltweed, you'll realise just how much that barb stops the bait going in, and I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people struggle to catch in siltweed. Basically, the fish suck in the bait and they can't actually get it in.
Because the barb's sort of tangled up in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And presumably your barbless thing, I mean, it's the age-old debate, isn't it? And you look online and it's sort of debated to the hilts, but is that from a fish's mouth perspective?
I think probably a rash statement saying I don't like barbs. Smaller fish, I think barbless are better for them. When a lot of head shaking and twisting and turning as you're playing them. And the mouths tend to be a little bit softer as well. I think barbless are better. For the bigger fish, I really honestly think a barb hook does less damage.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I've had situations before with a barbless hook where I've sort of like done the double hooking and I've sort of almost sort of like sewn in a fish's mouth. And you have no idea how it happens because in theory you've got applied pressure, haven't you, the whole time when you're fighting the fish. But it has happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're never giving the fish as much pressure as we think we are anyway. I think if the lead is still attached, a lot of the time you play the fish at right angles anyway. So, that right angle occasionally is going to tighten up and you're jolting them about.
Yeah.
They're twisting about.
No, for sure. And I think a lot of the time as well is it's a little bit of a misconceived idea of the higher test curve rod putting more pressure on the fish.
It sounds right, but I remember doing a talk at the Rico show at Coventry with Lee Jackson, and I was demonstrating how much pressure you're actually putting on with a rod. And I can remember I won't plug names and everything, but I basically got a long range 13-foot, 3.5 pound rod that felt really powerful, a very soft actioned 3.5 pound, 12-foot rod, and a 2 3/4 pound soft action rod. Got line through them, attached them to scales, and basically pulled as hard as I could until you actually shake when you get as hard as you can. Your muscles start going funny. And asked all the audience which they thought would pull the hardest, and nearly everybody, it'd be the 13-foot, 3.5 long range poker stick. The 12-foot, 2 3/4 pulled exactly the same pressure as the 13-foot, 3.5. The softer action 3.5, the sort of playing action, compound taper, that pulled half as much again. So it's very deceiving. As you pull in the 13-foot, 3.5 stiff rod, you think you're giving them loads, but you're not. You're only pulling this similar to a softer rod.
Yeah, and I think my take on it is because the rods, when it's fully compressed, there's just no more give, is there? I think at that point you're giving it everything. With a higher test curve rod, you can be there's always that little bit more it can sort of give.
Well, you can never pull very hard with a long rod anyway. It's the reason why the proper big fish, the tuna, the shark, marlin and such like, they never fish for them with long rods. It's always short 5, 6, 7-foot rods because you can pull a lot harder with them. The extra length goes against you. You think you're pulling hard, but in effect you're not.
So I'm sort of taking this off topic a little bit. What are your thoughts then on sort of like, there's a lot of craze at the moment with the shorter rods, and obviously like you've got like your 9 or a 10-foot rod. There's a water near me where the 10-foot where he won't let you fish with anything under 11 foot. My personal sort of feelings was because he probably just has a bugbear of all the craze of short rods and he doesn't like them, and that's his sort of sticking point. But the reasons being it can cause sort of like more mouth damage. I don't know if you've got any sort of thoughts on this, because my thought is surely if like the test curve's all relative, whether it be a shorter rod or a longer rod, the test curve is all relative.
No. 25 years I spent in the tackle shop, you used to find ways when you was having to be behind the counter waiting for customers, you used to find ways to pass time at times, And one day I got the idea of I needed a rod for a bit of hook and hold type scenario where I hadn't got a lot of room. It was actually a catfish situation. And I wanted a rod that would pull hard, and ended up with the old. I actually put the scales on the tip rings, to be fair. But out of all the rods in the shop, bearing in mind we sold shark rods, tuna, stand-up sticks, and everything else, the rod that pulled the hardest in the whole shop was a Free Spirit 6-foot tree creeper, and that's about 2¾ pound.
Wow. Okay.
And that pulled considerably more than the really heavy-duty boat rods.
And it's which do you ever use sort of shorter rods in your carp fishing?
Yeah, I don't like 6-foot rods. I mean, probably now I'm involved with Free Spirit. We sell a lot of 6-foot rods, but to me, you've got no leverage with them. You know, you're playing the fish on 10 inches of rod when it's bent round.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got pads in the edge or reeds or overhanging trees and such like, I don't see why they're so popular. You know, you can't really reach round. I use the 8.5s a fair bit, and I use 10-foots as well. But just on the waters that are right for it, you know, from casting from under trees and such like. I enjoy playing them on short rods, but you do need to take your time on them. They do pull hard.
Yeah, so I've sort of I guess joined the short rod craze. This is many years ago when I sort of started a family and things, and it's for me it was all about the portability and the pack down size, and I've always been a sort of a travel light kind of guy anyway. And I recently moved for some softer 9-footers to some sort of stiffer action 10-footers, and I've got to say the first fish I pulled into, I sort of pulled out of once I pulled it sort of like locked up against the snag, and actually noticed a real difference.
Yeah. I don't get this with anglers wanting to use the 10-foot rods and still try and chuck a long way with them and everything. I just find playing the fish from any range on a shorter rod, it's hard work. You forever pumping, and you know you're not retrieving a lot of line between pumps. But like I say, I do use short rods, but generally, you know, when I'm just fishing a few rod lengths out.
Yeah, a lot of my fishing's sort of close range. I can fish probably accurately at 60 yards if I was sort of spotting and baiting, and then I could probably my limit would be about 80 yards.
That's with the 10-footers, yeah.
With the 10-footers, yeah.
That's being realistic. That is, you know,
yeah.
The bigger chuckers will get a bit further than that, but most people, if they were to be truthful, you know, 80 yards is really the sensible limit on that sort of rod.
Yeah, for sure. And your sort of fishing nowadays, do you sort of do much long range fishing, or do you find as you sort of as you've matured through the years, it's sort of something that doesn't appeal to you as much anymore?
No, I still do it when I feel I need to. I mean, some of the venues I've fished over the years, it's all been long range. You know, I'll always fish a rod short, but there are waters where I have really struggled to catch fish short. I do what's needed. I'd much rather catch them a rod length. Well, to be fair, my favourite range is the 30 and 40 yard. That's the ideal for me. I've not got to crawl about quite the same on the bank, and you know, and I'm not stretching myself to, you know, I can do the job properly.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I do what's needed. Basically, I've not been on ultra long range waters for a while. I mean, at Grenville, you know, it was very much a case, and a lot of the time, just those extra few meters would get you an extra take, or would actually catch you a fish. You know, we was fishing silly ranges there at the time. I think the furthest caught one on a measured cast was 192. But
wow,
you know, it's something nice to have in the armoury, being able to do that.
Is that 192 yards your longest?
Yeah.
And that's incredible. That's casting. You've not sort of boating that out.
No, that's casting.
I suppose you're quite a big frame guy. I guess it sort of leads to it. But yeah, that's something I could never do. I think it's one of the things in my fishing.
It's speed and timing with casting, and the thing that people don't use is body weight, body transfer weight. For years, I've always been able to hold my head okay with, you know, with casting and everything, but going back quite a lot of years now, when the rods weren't capable of doing what they can do now. I'd got to the 140-yard mark, which I could fish comfortably. The odd cast you could put in and go a lot further, but if fish were at 140, I could fish for them and catch them at 140. But I seem to have been stuck at the same limit for years and years and years. And we was doing some filming in France, and it was the first time I met Mark Hutchinson. And I said to him, I'll make a cast, rip me to pieces, do what you want. You won't offend me, but see if you can put any more distance on me casting. And I explained that, I've been stuck on 140 for years. And he put the first cast in and sort of nodded his head. He said, yeah, that went. But I always used to swing the lead and try and catch the lead on the backswing, thinking I was compressing the rod more. And he said, next cast, stop swinging your lead. So I did that, did the next cast, and made 3 casts. And from, I think, 140, which was the first cast, which was always my normal, long one, I think I did 170 something in 3 casts. And just the little tweaks that he gave me, the main one was the body weight transfer. I'd always cast with my arms like most people. Once I not forgot about the arms, but used the body instead, or used the body as well as, suddenly the distance was coming up. And like I say, just from 140 to 175 in a few casts. And of course, you work on it then, and you get the timing a little bit better, and the big distances eventually come.
Yeah, for me, it's something on my list to improve, definitely. I think I've been quite sort of, I fish down in Cornwall, I fish a lot of small intimate waters, I guess. And it's been
that's the thing. If you're not doing it, I mean, long range for me at the moment is probably 120. As far as I need to put one anywhere. If I was to go back on really big water, I probably would struggle on the big distances now. But you soon get in the swing of it again. It's just practice scenario. Just getting used to it again. There's some animal casters out there. In my first couple of years on Grenville, I think I was probably the biggest caster on there. But within a short time, the lads turned up, and I just also ran after that. There's a lot of them 200 plus. And I've still not been able to do that one. Not with beta drag. I've done it with a straight lead.
That's it. And is this mono? Are you sort of using braid or Grenville?
No, mono. I don't like braid. I won't use braid.
Do you use it on your marker rod or anything, or you just sort of stay?
I use it on the marker rod only. But I still have a fluorocarbon leader or a copolymer leader. That's perhaps something worth mentioning. That I do see a lot of people with the marker rods with braid all the way through, and the amount of times people struggle to get the float to come up, and it's simply because they've got a braided leader on. They're so soft that it travels around the main line in the air, and they're in a tangle on the bottom. Substitute that for a nylon or copolymer or fluorocarbon leader, it never happens. Everyone pops up, and it just amazes me more people don't attach a normal leader.
Yeah, you speak in perfect sense, Shaun. I'm sort of thinking in disbelief that I'm probably that stupid, because I have those problems that you mentioned straight away.
I fish with people who do, and I always get onto them, and I don't know, they never seem to do it. The main thing I get is, but you're not going to feel so much. Total nonsense that. 2 rod lengths of nylon. You bounce your normal fishing rod in the edge, you feel as much as you can with braid at 100 yards. Okay, if you've got 70, 100 yards of nylon out there is a lot of stretching. You can't feel the same. But there's hardly any stretching in rod length and a half.
No, not at all.
The beauty of it, if you need to leave the floating position for any reason, if you're going to get some action on the rod or whatever, the fluorocarbon leader in the middle of the swim doesn't stand out like a big, thick piece of braid.
No, very true. Very true. So, sort of rewinding, going back to where we were with winter, we sort of digressed a little, I guess. So quite often you don't sort of like bait-wise, you're very much a match the hatch.
I don't feed them so much in the winter. I always like to fish on bait. It's rare to fish a single hook bait. Sometimes I'm quite a lover of just little stocking mesh pockets of smell. I tend to bait fish quite a bit, if that makes sense. Just bits of things and just trying to create a visual rather than lots of scent. I don't up flavour levels like a lot of people do. That all stem from watching the fish in my garden, actually. When they sort of semi-laid up in the winter, if you drop a really high flavour bait amongst them, they'll shuffle and move out of the way of it. Drop a normal bait amongst them, they just sit there, and 2 days later it'll be gone. But it seems to be one of these things that so many people, somebody must have written one day about upping flavour levels in the winter, and so many people do it.
Yeah, that's it. And do you sort of happily move your rods around a little bit more come the winter time? Or are you sort of happy, if you're happy with the area, you can sort of sit it out and wait there? And
it depends on venue, that one, really. I very much, I know we touched on it on the last one, I'm a small lead user when I can, particularly so in the winter. And if I've got to use big leads, I know we said it before, I'll go on to running all the time in the winter. But no, I work on not spooking them, basically. I'll always use the smallest lead I can reach them with, and just try and be discreet with it.
And regarding sort of like the fish themselves, is that something that you would change anything towards, sort of like a change in behaviour for them in the winter? Or is there anything you sort of notice sort of over the years? I know you sort of write your diaries and you document everything. I don't know if you've got anything to interject on sort of fish behaviour and how to approach it differently.
I take a lot of notice of the warm spots on the lake. Again, it's something I don't know. You look at your typical waterway, you can catch them close in. Everywhere's got a snag bush or something. The fish will be under there. There's always a warm side and a cold side to that bush. It amazes me how people have a favourite side to want to fish. I like to fish baits in the warmest part of the lake. If you watch the sun come round, the bits of bank that get the first rays of sun, they're never really getting any warmth with it. The last rays of sun in the winter is where most of the warmth's coming from. So areas that get most of the sun from early afternoon till dark are very often areas where the carp will be sat. If I'm really struggling to find carp in the winter, the middle of the lake has always been a good bet. It seems to be a comfort zone where they're not getting buffeted too much, they're not having to move about too much. So either central areas or warm areas. The other scenario, if you've got weed and shallow water and such like, weed is obviously dark, it absorbs a little bit of heat, and it'll be warmer than a gravelly area or a clean area.
No, definitely.
It's all, if you go for a walk in your garden with no socks and shoes on in the winter, you'll be amazed at the difference in temperature between some black tarmac and some concrete slabs, for instance. And it's exactly the same under the water. And the shallower the water, the more of an effect that is.
I don't know if you've done much sort of open water swimming, but from the bits that I've done, this is sort of in contradiction to what you said. What really amazes me is sort of like, I guess, I don't know if the thermocline's right, because I don't know if the thermocline's just regarding depths rather than actual area of the lake. But when you're swimming along, you go through some really different sort of temperatures, from warm to freezing cold. And a lot of the time, if you were just to sort of swim across the lake and to sort of like feel where the warm areas and the cold areas are, you wouldn't have put it down to where the sort of like the sun's shining. I don't know if that doesn't make any sense.
Surely that'd be springs.
Oh, maybe. I mean, I'm talking about big quarries. This is where I've done it. Just super deep, and I couldn't imagine it would have an effect. I don't know. One
thing that I mean, we don't seem to get so many freeze-ups as we used to do. We don't seem to get so many ice overs. But one thing I always make a point when the lakes are frozen is, again, you see the warm areas. If you don't have a look at them when they're froze, there's always a dark patch, which has been the last bit to freeze.
Mm.
And you'll get several of that. And I've always put those down to being springs anyway. But if you do it enough times, each time it freezes, you'll notice the patches in the same spots each time. And again, it's a real simple hotspot, no pun intended. A real easy way of finding a spot is just looking at a lake when it's froze over.
Yeah, it's just completely basic but eye-opening at the same time. It makes perfect sense.
Most of my fishing is, I know a lot of the times when I've mentioned things to people and it's like, well, it's obvious. Well, yeah, you just, it takes me a lot of years sometimes to suss these things, but a lot of the sort of breakthroughs I've had in my own angling have been so, you can slap your head really for not thinking of it earlier.
That's it. Are you still there, Sam?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm listening intently. I'm enjoying sitting back and letting go of the reins.
That's the quietest I think you've been on a pod.
Ever, yeah. Well, I've got some bad news as well. I think I've ordered the wrong stove.
What have you ordered yourself?
Well, I remember you saying the XL, didn't you? I've got I've got the just the normal push box.
Right. It's all right. You just have to keep feeding them. That's anything. The bigger one, it keeps going a bit longer.
Oh well, there we go.
Yeah, it's still doing the job.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Bit of fun.
And it'll be lighter than mine and slightly smaller than mine.
Unlike my lead, see. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. You probably get one, and then you get a feel for what you like, don't you? You probably find your own way.
Yeah, they might not suit you. I just enjoy using them. But was it a Lixider? Someone said they had.
Yes.
They're a great starter one as well to make sure that you are going to use it and like them, but you can always upgrade to a bush box or whatever afterwards.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I try not to cook on the bank, so I do quick overnighters. I just take cold food because I don't want to be bogged down with extra weight, and I want to be mobile. But I mean that's just the way my angling is these days, unfortunately. I just think it's a little bit of fun.
Yeah, but cutting your gear down though, it's like you can have your fresh brew in the morning with one of those, and you're carrying a lot less than you are if you're carrying a gas cartridge and a stove.
Yeah.
Particularly if you get yourself a stainless mug and just brew in the mug as I do.
I go without it these days. Yeah.
Sorry?
I go without tea these days.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Crate of beer weighs me down a little bit, but
bottle of wine's a lighter to carry.
Yeah, very true. I was really enjoying the chat that you two guys were having. Just to backtrack a little bit, and something I wasn't sure on. You said that your hook bait is the smallest bait there. Now I'm guessing that's because you use a bait out the bag, so to speak, and I'm guessing you want it to be lighter than the others to suck up. But...
Yeah, it's when I'm boilie fishing, really, because obviously if I'm using the hemp and such like, the hook bait isn't going to be the smallest bait, but
yeah,
why? I couldn't tell you the last time I cast a round bait out. I always chew baits up and misshape them, the hook bait. But I quite like fishing that sort of bait amongst just a normal untampered bait, boilie, other than perhaps a bit of a pre-soak of giving it.
So why smaller than the rest of the baits you're feeding?
I just think they cause less suspicion. If you watch a lot of the early quarter stuff, everything small just gets hoovered up. It's the normal single round boilers that seem to have the back on.
Do you get plagued with quote unquote nuisance species?
No, unfortunate really. I don't really suffer them on the waters of fish.
Yeah.
I think I've had one this summer. It was a 11.5 pound bream. I can live with one of them. I'm not plagued with nuisance fish. When I've been on waters in the past with nuisance fish, bream have always been the biggest pain
Mm.
for me. I can live for a few things, but when you sort of 6 times a night and such like with them, a little dodge I found with bream was fishing a 20 mil cut in half and fishing it back to back like a butterfly. They just seem to struggle to take them. You just seem to struggle to get them in.
Mm.
Again, an easy little tip there if anyone's getting a night. I've done it with 15s as well. You still get the odd one, but it does cut your take rate down when you're getting nuisance fish.
I want that must be something to do with the vacuum. 'Cause, I mean, they'll take a double 20 easy.
Yeah, but it's smooth and goes in easy, doesn't it? If you think about it.
Yeah,
If you took a Malteser off your kitchen table, it's going to go in easier than one coming up flat ways first.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
I'd
interesting.
imagine they probably, because they've got to open the mouth a lot for 20 mil.
Yeah,
And I'd imagine they only need to put the lips around it and they can suck it in. But on a flat side, it's having to stretch that bit more for it. I don't know. I'm sort of armchair theories there, but it's certainly it's a dodge I've done which has given me a little bit more sleep.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not totally foolproof, but it slows the job down.
Yeah. And I mean, do you, in terms of your boilie fishing, do you do anything different in winter? Do you change anything at all, or not, for the carp schema reception or feeding requirements?
No, not really. No, I fish. My baits are very subtle compared to a lot of people's. I don't want my bait screaming out. I want them to be able to see them, but that doesn't mean using fluoros. You've normally got water clarity in the winter anyway.
Mm.
I like just little pockets of cloud and things happening.
Mm.
I use a lot of crushed up, dusted baits stuck on top of normal baits and things. So there's always something happening, like a bonbon type scenario, or just the liquids which I've already put in there as well. There's the baits working straight away all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you're coming at that from a not only
I use a lot of paste wraps as well, which I probably use. I do use them all through the summer, but it's not on all the rods in the summer. It's rare I cast out in the winter without paste on.
Yeah, I do a lot of paste work. I mean, have you got egg in your paste? Is it literally just your boilie paste, or do you knock up a specific paste?
No, I still have egg in it.
Right.
Yeah, I use paste quite a bit in mesh bags as well, which again I don't really read or see people doing. No. Another thing, I like to put pellet or bits of bait in paste as well. It's not always just a straight paste wrap. It'll be a loaded paste wrap, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Bits of boilie or what have you.
Yeah. Sometimes a couple of grains of hemp, and literally that, just a couple, just something extra happening.
Mm. Not many people use paste. I think it's underused. I think people miss a trick with that.
Yeah, no, I can see that with our sales. We sell paste. We do, sell a fair bit, but certainly not compared to, I wouldn't even like to guess the percentage of angler who has paste with the boilie orders.
No.
Most of it's the river anglers, to be fair, but I'd be lost without paste.
Yeah.
I tend to trim the hook bait into a fat carrot shape, which helps the paste grip on a little bit better. But that's about the only difference to do there.
I use those little paste coils on the hair.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, very good.
I always wrap them around a boilie of sorts, to be fair, just in case I'm getting the silverfish pecking away at it too much.
Yeah.
So, I'm always left with a bait. I am one for, I don't like to recast if I don't have to. Once I'm happy with where something is, I'm one that'll, leave a bait out for a long while. So I need a bit of peace of mind there.
Yeah. Do you do much stalking, or are you mainly stationary?
Yeah. I had a ridiculously long common just after lockdown on the old 8.5 foot rod and centre pin and float.
Oh,
It was a fish I didn't actually know was in the water when I caught it, but amazingly, I caught it the following week as well. It was quite an obscure one, that.
See that I didn't know you were into that, but that's something I'd love to talk about. What I'm talking about is the centre pin. I think earlier you mentioned more traditional tackle. Before I go on to that, Pete, were you going somewhere with the wind stuff? Sorry to take over, mate.
Do you know what? The last thing I was going to ask was about parasites, Shaun. And I didn't know if again, I'm just literally going over your experience, and I know you sort of journal and log everything. I don't know if you've really noticed any difference in a fish's sort of behaviour or habits when they're sort of like loaded up with parasites.
There's certainly a lot more lethargic, particularly with Argulus and such like, which you often catch them with in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
The strange one on the most local pits to me, there's two lakes side by side, so there's on the same water table, same Trent water going through them and everything. Yeah, one of them, the fish always remain active in the winter, always produce a lot of fish. The other one is a bit of an headbanger. You can catch them, but whenever you catch them on the more difficult one, they're always really heavily leached up, often Argulus on them as well. Yet the water next door, which is the same fish really, they just keep so much more active, and they never got anywhere near the amount of leeches on them, and they fight so much harder. Yeah, you know, when they're leached up and everything, I find they just tend to chug around a little bit, and you know, if you was on a hand line, you'd have them straight in. I think it's only because we mess about with rods that don't pull as hard as we think do. But, you know, you get a bit of a scrap from them.
Is that because of the parasites, you think, or is it purely because they've been holding up and lethargic?
I'm not sure. Not sure about that. I'm guessing a lot of it is because if you sit down long enough, you're a little bit stiff and slow when you get up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if you know, straight in from work, you might be tired, but you're still active. I mean, it's guesswork, that one, but I suppose it makes sense. They're always much more heavily slimed up as well on the water that's that little bit more difficult.
Yeah, and these are right next door.
Yeah, it's literally 15 yards apart.
Right. It's bizarre.
The rise up and down the same with the river, so you know it's all the same water going through it, filtering through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just one of those sort of like head scratches.
Yeah. Just brought one to mind actually. I just mentioned the river. I've noticed on two different waters this season after the big floods of last winter. I like fishing silt. You know, a lot of people seem hell bent on finding gravel bits and this that, and the other, and I quite like fishing in silt. Two different lakes I'm fishing at the moment, well, pits. Some of the sort of dead cert spots I've had over the years that you eventually find, and you know, you sort of little guarantee areas. They've been a waste of time this year, and I'm winding in really stinky, smelly leads. And it's as I don't know what went through in the floods. I mean, we suffered them really bad up this way. I don't know about down your way. And it's as though a lot of the sump holes have just filled up with, well, something that seems to have killed the bottom. Something I've always done is smell leads when I wind in and the bit of braid and everything, because it always taints. And to me, good silt, it smells like soil.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just finding some really putrid areas now, which were always, you know, like I say, the dead cert take spots. So if anyone's struggling on some of the areas they normally catch from, it's perhaps time to start looking for a few new areas. The lake bottoms have definitely changed around me. Depth's still similar and everything, you know, your features are still there, but there just seems to be some really putrid areas now which never were before.
And you're putting that down to the floodwater?
Yeah. I've spoke to a few people about that, and I'm getting a similar thing from a few people now as well, once it's been pointed out to them, sort of thing.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not just the water that I'm on. But if you're fishing waters where you're only getting, a handful of chances a year, it can take a long while to realise that they're no longer any good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've rarely sort of fished silty areas. I'm fishing sort of some old sort of pits, which are very, very deep, and it's a lot of margin work.
Yeah.
I've got to say though, sort of like this, I'm thinking back this year, I've really not noticed many putrid sort of silty areas in my lakes at all. Sort of, I know whenever I cast into a silty area, I always have a sniff of the lead, and very rarely I'm getting any sort of putrid areas. So maybe I've been on the opposite effect to you.
Yeah, was there much floodwater go through? I mean, we was having torrents going through the pits. It was all part of the river basically in the end, and everything that was upstream. There's industrial areas and everything else. Anything that was on the ground is all washed through the venues.
Yeah, I think they're probably very, very sort of different in nature. These pits are. There's certainly a lot of water going through them, unprecedented amounts really last winter. But yeah, there we are. Right, I need to run off and have a wee very quickly.
I could do the same actually. I just glanced at the clock as you said your last sentence, thinking I could do with escaping for a minute.
Let's have a little pit stop, and then Sam can speak to you about the traditional tackle.
Yeah, traditional tackle, Shaun. Is this something that you're into?
Yeah, on and off. I enjoy using it. I'm actually sat looking at a couple of Richard Walker Mark IVs at the minute.
A book? You say a book or an actual Mark?
No, rods. No, a couple of cane rods in front of me at the minute.
Now, sorry, go on.
I'll go say I think it started off really. I mean, when I started fishing, I had to use my granddad's tackle because nobody in the family fished or anything, and I got wooden centre pin reels and cane rods anyway. And I think after a lot of years, it was just I touched on it earlier, making things difficult for yourself again, and I basically started revisiting where I'd come from. I get a big kick out catching them on cane. It's got its limitations, but choose the water right and can have a lot of fun with them. Now, I've always used centre pin reel. I love catching carp on centre pins anyway. And but I'm not a purist or whatever in any means. I'm quite happy having a modern reel on a modern centre pin on a cane rod, same as I use Granddad's old Speedier on carbon rods. So I'll mix and match and do it for myself. I don't. I've never tried to conform anywhere and just do what feels right.
Yeah. So you obviously fish with the Dick Walkers, the Mark IVs for carp.
Yeah.
Which versions are there? Because obviously there's been quite a few of those, isn't there? Do you know which ones they are?
Yeah, I use the B. James. You find with most cane rods, you never get two that feel the same anyway. So
yeah,
you can ask somebody what they use. It'll be different to the same one of someone else's. Yeah, it's a natural materials at the end of the day. They've all got slightly different properties.
Yeah.
I think they look nice on the bank, as silly as it is. I get a nice feeling when I'm using them. But, you are limited where you can use them. It wouldn't be fair on the fish on some of the venues of fish to be using them.
No, I think it's the creek as well and just the feel. I mean, they're terrible to play fish on. We got to be honest, don't we? But there's something very romantic about having a.
I quite like playing fish on cane, to be fair. I certainly prefer it to fiberglass.
See, I've got a Chapman 500, which is a far lesser rod than the Dick Walker Mark IV, of course. But it's still supposed to be a good cane rod.
Yeah. Again, it was a very popular rod. A lot of people still use it. I mean, I do talk to quite a lot of traditionalists and mix with a few of them. They're popular rods. Yeah.
Do you, if you did, I know you said sometimes you'll use like a fixed spool reel, but if you did pair that up with a centre pin, what centre pins have you got?
I like the Speediers. I think because I sort of inherited my grandfather's speedier. It's just a reel I like the looks of, and I've caught a lot of nice fish on them. In fact, I think the picture on the Shaun Harrison Angler Facebook page, if you look at the little picture there and enlarge it, you'll see the speedier on that one. There's Gaily mirror I'm holding.
Oh, okay. I'll have to have a look at that.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, they're very solid, aren't they? The speediers, I think.
Yeah.
Reels.
But I've got quite a lot of centerpin reels, to be fair, but I use the Akumas quite a lot as well, which are a very, very reasonable, cheap price centerpin.
Yeah, my friend raves
reel
about.
you can really abuse, and good solid spools on them. But no, I've got various. I've got aerials and all sorts.
Oh yeah, that's a proper centerpin, that isn't it? The aerial. Bit of money there.
Yeah, but
Very nice.
like I say, I use what feels right. If I go chub fishing, I use centerpins for most of my normal river fishing. I use centerpins for barbel quite a bit. But there'll be different ones on different rods.
Yeah, trotting. I think they come into their own, don't they?
Yeah, so long as you're not needing to cast too far. A lot of people struggle with them. But lots of the trotting I do nowadays, I use a 15-foot rod for it, and I don't know. I've never seen the need for a fixed spool since I've had the longer rods. You can just hold them out a lot easier, and you're more direct contact.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So moving back onto more modern day carp angling, you've I know from chatting to you earlier that you've fished some very deep pits, 30 plus feet, as have I actually, but I haven't had the same findings that you have. You when we had a chat on the phone.
Right.
Tell everyone about carp in deep water and the color of the carp skin.
I think what we was talking about earlier on the days I was fishing when I was on the Granville Syndicate, there was quite big areas of the lake there which were 35 foot deep, which most people tend to avoid. Most people seem to go out the comfort zones once they're over 20 odd foot. Granville, the shallow areas were like 16 foot and some plateaus at 20 odd foot. But this big chunk of the lake was 30 odd foot deep. And I was quite lucky. I did well on Granville. I caught quite a lot of fish there. But I'd caught a lot of fish between each better fish, if that makes sense. And it was only one day, I was getting one of these eureka moments. I was sat pondering things. I was looking at a couple of pictures of some big fish Swan had had. And it suddenly struck me that there was very, very pale. Yeah, a lot of the other Granville fish at the time was catching quite dark fish. And it suddenly occurred the pale fish, they weren't getting so much light, so they got to be living in the deep water or spending bigger percentages of the time in the deep water. And on the back of that one, I started fishing the swims that didn't used to get fish much in the 35 foot. And I think the first 3 trips of doing it, I had £35 plus fish each trip. Pale looking fish and everything, but there were fish that weren't visiting the areas I always tended to be fishing. If I could find a plateau or a bar in 20, 25 foot, I tend to be fishing that rather than the deepest. But it's again, as I said earlier on when we had the chat, I've not heard anyone mention that about the colour changes. One of the big fish on Granville, I remember a friend of mine, Ron Key, had it, and it was absolute jet black. It was, as dark as they come. And it had obviously spent its summer just living either around the edges of the island or on the plateaus and such like. I caught it 2 or 3 years later, and it was as pale as anything. It took us a while to realise it was the same fish, but it just changed its habits. It was living in different areas of the lake. And I think most people would be amazed just how quickly the colour does change. Like I say, the fish in my garden in the winter, it's a natural pool. There's no liner or anything, so it gets quite mucky in the summer with them turning the bottom up, digging away in the silt. And in the summer, if I have a look at them, they're silver when you take them out. They're really wishy-washy. Yeah, winter, the jet black again.
Yeah, I mean, if even when you first catch a carp, if you then let that carp, relax and de-stress in the margin for 10 minutes, it darkens up then even. I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah, because it's in shallow water, it's getting more light in it.
Do you think it's the light or do you think it's the stress aspect?
No, I'm convinced it's the light.
Even
So the shallower, clearer waters, the darker the fish normally are. If you got murky water where they're digging away in silt all the time, they're generally quite wishy-washy pale fish. Or the deep water ones are. You generally tell when somebody's showing you the pictures how densely stocked the water is that they're fishing as well. If they're sort of quite light coloured fish, there's a lot of fish in there. Because they're rooting the bottom up and they're living in the murk a lot of the time.
Yeah.
If they're showing you, really dark fish, everyone's a dark one. There's either very, very weedy, shallow, and they're not able to dig the bottom up, or there's hardly any fish in it.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm on about between 5 to 10 minutes in the edge, recovering in the landing net. I'm sure they darken up then. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, that's probably is a stress thing.
Yeah.
But it's. I mean, I've never actually had one out of the water to see how quickly they turn, but certainly, I don't think I've used a live bait since the early '80s. But back then, when we used to do the bucket trick, they'd change colour overnight.
Yeah.
That'd be roach and chub or whatever else we were using.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these imported carp are they're just basically bred in basically swimming pools or extremely large paddling pools, and they're so dark because obviously it's clear water. And fisheries buy them. I mean, I don't agree with buying those types of fish anyway, so it serves them right, but they'll put them in their water and then wonder why they're pale as anything, and it's obviously just their environment.
Because of overstocked, like most of the carp lakes nowadays.
Some murky water and they're just not getting the light penetration, and they just go light as anything. It is very
but it's certainly, I mean, I mentioned it earlier on, and it was we've really just talked about fish changing colour, but it actually increased the average weight of the fish I was catching. Realising some of them bigger fish were living in the deeper. The smaller ones seem to live where most of the food's going, which makes sense. And most of the anglers, if they could, they'd be fishing the shallow areas. So that's where the younger growing fish would live in.
So just to switch gears a little bit, do you, how do I put this? When you're tackling a water, do you do certain things that would potentially limit your odds of catching the smaller fish and increase the odds of catching the bigger fish? Is there anything out of the box that perhaps people wouldn't be aware of?
Not really. The taste preferences change a little bit between ages, but that doesn't always mean big and little,
Yeah.
No, I think you need to get to know a water to be able to start fathoming them out. You need to see fish caught and how they're being caught and start to build the picture that way.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult just to go blind on a water and sort out bigger fish. I do find baits that blend in more and more subtle baits seem to produce a better average of fish. If you just want the bobbins moving, go in there bright, obvious, and everything else, and you'll catch the young ones that are darting about, grabbing everything that's going. Dark up bait scenario, or not necessarily dark up bait, a sandy coloured bait on a sandy bottom. It looks quite a bright bait when you're casting it out, but have a look what they sat on the bottom. If you camouflage your baits, they seem to be less effective for the smaller fish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a black bait, which we would think is dull, is actually very bright on a very sandy bottom.
Yeah, stands out like a sore thumb on a lot of waters.
Yeah.
But I think as fish get older as well, they utilise different sensors to what they do when they're younger. I'm sure when they're young, the eyesight is quite an important thing for them. I think that becomes less so as they get older.
Yeah, I was going to ask your opinion. I mean, I personally think it's that the younger, more energetic carp, they see it obviously, and they're quicker to it. I don't think it's that the bigger fish wouldn't eat the brighter bait. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's just they don't get to it first, or do you think they're more wary of a brighter bait?
No, I think the young ones beat them to it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I think it was Kevin Clifford wrote years ago in this. I think it was Kevin on Redmire, and he was baiting up with jelly tots from memory, or one of the kids' sweets that's all different colours. And he noticed even back then on the first baiting that the little fish were grabbing the bright ones, and the bigger ones had come and mop up what was left, basically. And that's something that's stuck in my head since being a kid, really. I mean, it's always been semi-part of how I've thought along things.
Yeah, interesting.
Always worth ringing the changers and just seeing, fish a bright bait, fish a dull bait. Well, not so much dull, a bait that's going to blend in.
And this is the thing, there are so many variables in angling. This is the thing, you can get these ideals in your head, and sure, you can have them as go-tos, but ultimately you've got to figure out what is going on that water, how the target is feeding, and you just got to.
And somebody will always catch one on an orange pop-up 18 inches off the bottom. Yeah. There'll always be the exceptions anyway.
100%.
I remember having a winter session with mentioned him earlier, Hutch, Mark Hutchinson. He lives very close to Drayton, which is just stuffed full of suicidal carp.
Yeah.
And I'd never fished it before, and I'd been going through a bit of a tough period, and he sort of had me over for a bit of a social day. And it everywhere had been froze over for a while, and it thawed on the Thursday, I think it was. He rung me up. He says, "Do you fancy going to Drayton? It's thawing out." I went on the Saturday, and I think we had 50 doubles between us in the day. It was ridiculous fishing. But I think I only saw 3 or 4 other fish caught all day. And I picked up on it then. I was using one of the baits that don't produce anymore, Gurkha Spice. And it was basically a sandy coloured bait, was its natural colour, it turned out. I never used dye or anything. And Hutch was doing well on cell. And suddenly occurred to us, we were watching what people were doing, and our baits were both catching on bottom baits, straight out of the bag scenario. And they were blending in. It was as camouflage colour as you could have given them, really. And that was midwinter, when people think about high flavours and, bright looking baits and everything. Yeah, I was watching people chucking the bright pop-ups about, and this, that, and the other, and we seem to be the only ones catching them.
Mm.
And again, it goes totally against the grain of what you'll read in most winter articles.
Yeah, well, I think you can read. Let's say you had this ideal that you wanted to prove right. I mean, someone would have written about it. This is the thing, isn't it? You can back any of your ideas up with a piece of writing somewhere along the line. And the thing, it's not just what is being published in the magazines now, is it? It's Google, and there's a whole back catalogue of writings for the last, 10 years or whatever it might be, however long it's been going. So yeah, and I suppose that circulates around, but I don't know if I can't help but thinking that takes away from some anglers' exploration of themselves. I think you got to go out there, you got to test it yourself, you got to look, you got to watch
Definitely.
See what's happening. And I think perhaps a lot of that is being lost in place of, let me Google, whoever carp superstar, let's see what they're doing and see what they think. And then it's almost like people don't have to think themselves or draw their own conclusions. I realize
I've said for a while, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I know I'm sounding like a whingy old man here, but that I can't help but think that.
No, I've said for a while now. It frustrates me a little bit. I don't know where the innovation is going to come from in the end, because there's the modern generations. No disrespect to them or anything, because they haven't had to. Things have been there for them, and you can always ask someone, and you get the answer. But that was never the case in the past, and that's why there was. I mean, carp fishing, in my eyes, progressed at its biggest rate from probably about 1982-ish to 1990, with the hair rig coming out. But the advancements in rigs in just a 3-4 year period was immense compared to what I've seen since.
I think
because people don't need to innovate now, and I think when you've been at it a while, you stop innovating because you've got your methods that catch. I don't do an awful lot of experimenting now because I know I can go out and catch them. Don't want that to sound wrong, but you're not keen and hungry like you are when you're younger. But a lot of the younger ones now, they're not needing to do the innovating. And things, to my mind, I look over the last, 10, 15 years, I've not really seen anything move forward in that time. Probably longer than that.
Yeah.
Not in big leaps like they did in the 80s.
Do you think maybe though that in some way it will come full circle, in as much as everyone's doing the same thing, aren't they? So you're just getting everyone copy the person that's copying the other person. Everyone's doing the same thing, and then the few people that really are looking at what's going on and trying different things and innovating, they're the ones catching. And do you think it'll almost come all the way back around, in as much as you've got a few people that really are sort of having it off from taking things outside the norm?
Yeah, definitely. Those brave enough to do their own thing. I mean, there's some cracking young anglers out there now. There is on the local lakes of fish. But I'm talking on the whole, most just if they've got a problem, there's an answer for them. Rather than trying to move things totally forward and totally different concepts. It's like rig scenarios. They're just, everything's a variation of what we've done. What we've done before. The only difference is really there's different tackle components now, which just clutter rigs up more.
Yeah. Get caught in silkweed, eh?
Yeah. It just makes it more obvious that, there's more armour on the one they need to avoid.
Yeah. Definitely. Pete, you still with us?
I am. I'm still here. Was there anything else sort of you wanted to sort of bring up or discuss?
I was just trying to read my notes and I can't see. I'm sat with candles on and they're not bright enough. It's a bit of a thing I've got, but I enjoy reading, but I can only read in a dark room by candlelight. But it seems that I'm getting old now because I can't even read the little scribblings that I read to you on the phone earlier.
Very Charles Dickens by candlelight, right?
Yeah, well, it's all part of me not conforming.
Having spoke to you only a handful of times, something that keeps coming up is you saying that you don't like to conform. You're not a conformist. Where did that come from?
Carp fishing and punk rock came into my life at the same time in 1977. And a lot of the punk style, I was obsessed with it. And a lot of that was the non-conformation and everything. And I guess it probably just stemmed from there. I've just not wanted to ever fit in. I'm probably a bit of an oddball to try and categorise because, like I said earlier, I fish traditional ways, I fish ultra modern ways. I don't do things to please other people. I do what feels right for me all the time. Yeah. And that goes through everything from the vehicles I've driven over the years to the way I dress to to whatever. I want to be me.
That is the essence of punk, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there was a B-side of one of the Pistols one was I Want to Be Me. But no, it's very much how it is. How I see it, everyone else is taken, so why try and be them? That person's already took. So, like I said, I'm sure it just stems from the punk days. But thinking about, when I was a real young nipper and everything, I'd just like to like things that other people didn't have,
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose back then, carp fishing was a little bit punk in that nature, wasn't it? It was
That's exactly why I got into it. It was the thing that you didn't do. If you read some of the early books, it was often quoted that life isn't long enough to carp fish. But, the biggest problem was finding a water with actually had carp in it, or more than half a dozen carp in it. It's, again, a very different thing nowadays. Carp anglers seem to expect to get some action during a weekend. Yeah, we'd fish all season and hope to catch half a dozen. These fish just they weren't around. And I'm sure majority of people carp fishing now, there's no way they'd have started carp fishing back in the day.
Yeah.
It seems to be the fashionable thing now, it's it's something people do, and it's quite a social thing now. Yet again, it was all totally different. I always sort of make the joke that a lot of the guys you see on the bank at the time, you wouldn't really want them babysitting for you. It was all oddballs, but I think that's why I got on with a lot of them. If you talk to anyone who's been around, quite a lot of years, you'll get a similar thing. Just a general spezzy angler. It was a real minority character in the sport. There was loads of general pleasure anglers and loads of match anglers. I've always lived very close to the River Trent, and you used to struggle to get on the Trent at the weekend. It just matches for miles and miles and miles. But it's the opposite scenario now. Just nearly everybody. Well, there's not so many spezzy anglers anyway, but loads and loads of carp anglers.
Yeah. Is there a particular time in your angling that you look back on the fondest?
Mid-80s.
Wow.
Everything had moved on quite quick. I was very, very fortunate to be early on the hare in my area. I was one of the first ones to use pop-ups, and I had quite a few edges, which made carp fishing very, very easy for a while. And it was great, what it's like. If you're successful at something in relative early years, you really, really like it. But no, I just loved that period, and it was all very much, like I said earlier, the rig advance. I'm not really into rigs nowadays, but at that time it was all rigs and bait, and we was all inventing things. You might have had half a dozen different people in different nets that would inventing the same thing, but a lot of us came up with what we thought were new, unique things. But give a lot of people the same problem, several people are going to fix it. But no, I loved that period. There's still a little bit of naivety as well about it. We didn't know the fish like we do now. You were still fishing waters, thinking there could be a really big fish in there. No, they were my special times.
Yeah. Something that I know you were looking over your notes for questions from some of your followers or subscribers, what have you. Something that we got so many questions about, and we still do, to be honest with you, is when you spoke about moon phases.
Yeah.
People struggled with it a little bit, and that's probably my fault for not prying in enough. But a lot of people wanted clarification as to when is a good moon phase to go and catch plentiful amounts of carp, and when is a good moon phase to go and catch the bigger carp? For those listeners that were kind of angsting about what we said on the last episode, can you clarify for them
sorry. Total simplifying it. If you just want to catch as many as possible, if you want to bag up when everything's feeding, is anywhere from the start of the new moon to the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to a few days before the full moon. That, to my mind, is the easiest time to catch carp. Once you've got to the full moon, then it's dying back down to the new moon starting. That's the most difficult time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The older fish feed regardless. Around the full moon, which it's got this thing now that it's a special time for catching big commons and everything else.
Mm.
It's one of the worst times to try and catch carp. But again, the older ones continue to feed, and that's the reason that they tend to slip up on the full moon. They're one of the few fish in the water that's feeding. If you've got mixed aged fish, if you've got a lake full of young fish, I wouldn't bother fishing on the full moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically what you're saying, just to put it in layman's terms, people, which you did, to be fair, but if the moon is getting bigger and it's relatively small, that is going to equate to more mouths feeding in the lake.
Yeah.
When the moon is right at the end and it's near its biggest, and let's say 2 days either side of the full moon, less carp and less fish really are going to be feeding. But the bigger ones, the big commons and big mirrors, will continue to feed. Therefore, the percentages come into play and you're more likely to hook them. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Yeah, that's right. But it seems to have got a little bit distorted because, I've sort of spouted about the full moon scenario. It is my favourite time for a big fish, but it's certainly not the easiest time. But I think people have misinterpreted it into thinking that it's the best time to go fishing and that's when you're going to catch everything.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a very poor time for catching carp, but the big ones slip up, or it becomes easier to find, because bigger fish feeding.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you've only got 2 in 80 acres, then you've still got to get everything else right. You still got to get the location right and everything else.
Yeah. And it's water dependent, isn't it? I mean, me and Pete were on a water. Pete, I don't know if you remember this, but I used to be heavily into the moon phases. I used to do very good on a waning gibbous, which is basically the period after the full moon, which would fly in the face of conventional wisdom about when when you're going to catch a lot. I used to do well, sort of, I don't know, probably 5 days after probably a week after the full moon. I'll have to look back at my notes now on this particular lake. So that just flies in the face of what we've just been speaking about. So I suppose the ultimate thing is find out what's working on your water and use this.
Yeah, definitely. Because, you've always got, something that goes against the rule anyway. As I said earlier, you get somewhere where orange popple painting yourself the bottom is the way, but it's take it to 20 place and it's not. All you can do really is just take recordings from where you are.
Mm.
I'm in fortunate position of having diaries that go back to the 70s, and there's so many of the better fish I've had have come at times when I'd expect them to come, but they still feed every day. So you're just as likely to catch the biggest fish in the lake, in the peak feeding period as you are on the full moon.
Yeah.
It's just looking at the averages of the fish on the periods that I try and work around now. I mean, these days I don't feel so desperate to go and catch a fish, but I'll try and put the odds on a better one. I'll make the effort when the full moon's there, but knowing that I'm not going to be catching lots of fish.
Yeah. Just to connect to points that you made there, which you didn't intend to connect, I don't think. Anyway, we're talking about biggest fish, well, maybe commons as well, big common, big moon. You mentioned orange pop-ups. Have you seen any correlation between commons, particularly big commons, and orange baits? I know that's a bit left field.
No, I've not, but it's not a colour I use a lot myself, so I wouldn't really notice on my own angling anyway. But no, I've not noticed anything really colour-wise
Okay.
to favour one thing or another.
Right.
No. I had a ridiculous season on a reservoir where 3 different times I had 20 fish in a day on a water where few of the anglers had 20 fish in a season. And the main thing I did different there, I was using the same bait, same bait, but I was mixing it up in 6 different colours,
Right.
6 individual colours, and I was baiting up with equal amounts of each. So like the old Smarty type scenario, you know. And the colour preferences through the day was changing all the time. And I'm convinced that it was the mixture of the colours and the regular changing of colours that caught me so many fish there. The amount of it, I mean, there'll be people listening to this who know the water, and they talk about it now, what I was catching. It was ridiculous fishing on a water where you didn't normally have ridiculous fishing. And it's something I've not, it's ridiculous, it's crazy because I've not repeated it on many places since. But it was just basically using exactly the same bait, rolling it in 5 different colours, and baiting up with little and often. I can remember I used to put like 3 purple out, 3 red, 3 brown, 3 yellow, 3 whatever, and just kept topping it up every 30 minutes, but changing the hook baits all the time. You get a quick succession of takes on red, then it'll go quiet, and start changing the colour over on the rods. Then suddenly you get a quick flurry on another colour. But it was never mixed colours, which I find quite obscure, and I can't explain why that would be. But there were different times of the day there was wanting or preferring to pick up a different colour. Yet there wasn't that much bait out there. You'd think they'd just be eating everything that was given them.
What is that then? Why would the colour preference change so quickly?
Don't know. Like I say, I've tried to get my head around that one a lot, and it just doesn't make sense to me. But so many people saw what was happening, you know.
Yeah.
Like I say, you know, 20 fish in a day 3 times on a water where a brace of fish was good going.
That would drive.
I've got a very good bait going as well, but the colour scenario was definitely a fact because, like I say, you'd purple be producing, then suddenly orange rod would start kicking off, and you'd change another rod to it, and it'd be going. But there was such short periods.
Things like that really, they interest me, but they aggravate me.
It aggravates me to this day because it just doesn't make sense. But you know, a lot of people saw it during that season.
No, I don't doubt it. Yeah,
and it was days only fishing. There were locals were able to get away with sneaking nights and things, and still, you know, I was turning up doing it all totally legal and rubbing people's faces. Really, not intentionally, but you know, yeah. But it's how carp angling is when you get things right. You know, the rigs were obviously bang on at the time. You know, it was probably a different sort of baiting than what they was used to. You know, fishing it like a match angler.
Yeah,
constantly trickling it in. Quite a lot of casting, but you know, the colour scenario was just obscure. But you talk to a match angler, you know, they'll be catching on red, they'll change to bronze, maggot, and start catching again, and they'll change to white and start catching again. You know, the match anglers have done it for years.
100%, yeah, and we don't carry that across into carp angling, do we? Even just feeding little and often, you know, building the swim. How many carp anglers build a swim? I mean, most of them probably would look at you cockeyed. They wouldn't even know what that is.
They would, but you look at the modern match carp angling that carp anglers are doing, you know, rather than the match anglers, and that's very much how a lot of them are doing it. You know, and there's some incredible anglers out there on the match side of things now, the match carp scene, and they've learnt the feeding.
Do you think?
Yeah, majority of the carp anglers that I see, and I'm sure the same as you see, they dump a load in when they get there and they sit and wait.
Yeah.
There's no building and no topping up.
No.
One of the things I've started doing this last 2 years really, I've started doing the baiting in the middle of the night and the 2 o'clock in the morning scenario and things, and that's I'm sure put me extra fish on the bank, particularly winter time as well, where you've only got you've got longer hours of dark than you have daylight, yet people tend to only ever put bait out in the daylight. And it's amazing how quick I've had the takes after baiting up at 2 in the morning and midnight and such like.
So are you setting an alarm to do that because you think it just keeps the fish engaged, or what?
No, it'll, with myself, I'm quite a lazy angler. It'll only be sort of one baiting in the night and things, but it's rare I turn in much before midnight anyway, so it'll be a last job before I get my head down.
Right.
Or if I've been up for we're all at an age now where we don't often get all the way through the night without having to get up. I'm not talking a lot of bait. I'm not talking about putting 5 kilo out in the middle of the night.
No. It'd
just be like 1 or 2 baiting missiles, whatever people are using nowadays. I've actually been using the air bomb quite a bit this year. The one that sprays your bait. The spot on top of the spot. That's quite a big edge on waters when people aren't using them.
Do you mean the total fishing gear?
Yeah.
Spot?
Yeah.
You put the ring in the back and it basically ejects mid-air, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah. You've got a total different. I mean, I keep talking about the local water, but most of the water fish, you see people with a spom or a fox scenario these days, or sometimes an ash one, but they're all got the same situation when they've hit the water. They've all got little piles of bait on the bottom. People going about the bait spreading in a big wide angle. It doesn't. You've got little clumps of bait. It spreads a little bit, but it's all very similar scenario. With the air bomb, it's just like throwing a load of bait out your hand. You've got a nice spread with it. You're making the fish move between each bait, so the rigs become more effective as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you need movement, don't you? The fish need to be moving. The more the fish move, the easier they are to hook. Simple as that. I think that's probably a little bit more subtle than a bloody heavy spom crashing in the water. I'd like to think just a little peppering of boilie or pellet or whatever it is you're using is possibly a little bit more acceptable for the carp.
Yeah, I'll go back to the stalking scenario. And on my early years of carping, I was quite lucky to. My local at the time, the water sort of did apprenticeship on, as they say. A lot of it was eyeball to eyeball stalking. And I found there, gin clear water, you're watching the fish coming along and such like, and dropping up baits in front of them, all visual, no rigs or anything, you're just waiting for them to suck their up bait. But there I found, throw in half a dozen lumps of paste at the time it was in, didn't spook them as much as throwing them in one at a time. And again, it's that sort of noise, a spread of bait seems to still work as an attractant in a lot of places. I know the very, very heavily fished waters, the ones that are flogged to death, then, a spom crashing in is going to signal food anyway. But I think on some of the, the place with a few less fish, where the fish are a bit cuter, that spread and splatter of bait definitely doesn't speak as much as a single one at a time.
How hard do you have to hit the clip with those?
Depends how big a spread you want.
Yeah.
And also how high you hit them to the spread. You do need to hit them pretty hard. When originally the first one they brought out was quite a large one, and I've got to admit I struggled a bit with them at the ranges I was fishing. You have to hit them to open them. But they brought a midi one out. I don't know if it was this year or not. I've only had the midi size one this year. and those will get on with great. They're light enough to hit hard, and the only downside, you need to pop a float up to start with just to get your distance. But once you've got that and you've got it clipped up on the local, my rod's been marked up for 2 different swims. I can catch at the same range, and you don't have to alter it. Obviously, if it's really windy, they're going to go a bit further. But once you've got them sorted, they're pretty good. But I like a spreader bait anyway. I don't want it on a kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, you can fish in a way that you would do if you were using a throwing stick.
Or a catapult. I've always had more action on the catapult than anything.
Yeah.
But obviously, you're limited to
range.
how far you can catapult baits, but with these, you can put them a lot further.
Exactly. So then you'd use a stick, but obviously, if there's bird life sticks, I mean,
you hardly get one to the bottom with a stick.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But the other thing with it, people don't seem to have picked up on, they're a great tool for relatively close range and small water as well, because you're not doing that crashing in.
Yeah.
If you've only got to spray the baits 20, 30 yards, it hardly needs to leave the tip ring. Another one, you can drift them under a overhang, or because they won't open unless they've hit a clipboard. So if you cast them on a line, you can actually pull them back and pull the bait out where you want it, edge it back to a float. Or something I've done on another water is cast one down a bank, go around with another rod, pick the line up, drag it to an overhang, and snatch the bait off back, and you swim that way. It's all things you can't get bait in any other way than that.
You'd have to give it a real.
Such versatile little things. Yeah. And before anyone starts saying anything, I've paid for mine. I've not had any sent me or anything. My order and cash has gone on to them. But no, they're great little tools, but I never see them used.
No, I spoke to Pete about it. I'm very impressed by them. Yeah, that's one of the. I wouldn't. It's not a breakthrough. You can't give it that kind of level of respect or what have you. But I think they're is pretty big in terms of delivering bait. I mean, not much has really come on in the terms of delivering bait, is it? The spawn was a big thing, and it's bloody fantastic. But this thing, I mean, it's got to be the biggest thing since the spawn. Not as big, maybe, but if you know how it's displaced, then I think it's a huge thing. Go on, Shaun. Sorry.
Yeah, I think possibly what's gone wrong for them a little bit. They bought the big one out to start with, the same as Spawn did, probably knowing that the midi size would be the big seller, but they went to cream a few sales to start with. And I think a few people who use them probably struggled with them, same as I did. Yeah, you could use them, but you were limited on the range with them, or I was. I couldn't hit them hard enough. And they've just dismissed them. Now there's smaller ones out there. It's a great little thing.
I think if another company had perhaps brought them out, they'd probably be a bit more popular as well.
Yeah, possibly.
People are fickle, aren't they?
Yeah. And they do look a bit fiddly and messy and everything as well, but, they're doing a different job. Again, it's all having something different in the armour. Mm-hmm. And you go to the percentages scenario again, and, it's another thing that, on the local lake, I've not seen anyone else using them. So, it's something I'm doing different to everyone else. Mm. Probably will be doing now, but hey-ho.
Yeah, it reminds me, I've got a bait spoon, and I have it screwed into a long bank stick, like a stick, a storm pole that you'd get on the front of your brolly, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, decent range of that. Obviously, nowhere near as far as that spod bomb or whatever it's called. It's a similar kind of baiting pattern to that.
And the beauty of the cup that you're using is you've got a line of bait.
Yeah.
As long as you get the angle right, so your line isn't going along that line. The beauty of them is baiting out of your swim, as you're probably aware if you can, and bait at an angle.
Yeah, and you can get some fair distance on them as well, and you can get a real nice
Yeah.
bait if you're experienced in it. I mean, if you bait up regularly, then you get your hand in real quick. But you can be pretty accurate with a good spoon and a rigid spoon and a long storm pole. Surprising,
Yeah.
you can get some baits. Yeah.
So I see more and more with the long poles now and the cup on the end. But
Oh,
I
shipping out.
look out. Yeah, it just seems a lot to carry to me. That does.
See, I've not done much of. I had a little homemade one years ago. I think Pete's still got. Actually, Pete, you gave it back to me, didn't you?
Mm.
I think. But Pete, you've got a very long pole, haven't you, for shipping out and slightly dropping, which is totally different to what I was on about with a storm pole, and I was on about launching the boilies with the thing. But
no, so sorry, I was changing the subject to
I
the
see.
pole scenario.
Yeah, Pete, you do a lot of that, don't you?
I probably don't do it as much as I should, to be honest. Like Shaun sort of alluded to, it's a lot of gear to carry, isn't it? Which sort of I let myself down a little bit on that front because I like to travel light and I do my short sessions and I don't want to be bringing all sorts of gear with me. But they've certainly, I think, they can be an edge.
You do use it sometimes, don't you?
Yeah. I do use it. I think it's homemade. It works well. Well, you've seen it, haven't you? It does what all the others on the market do. It's quite flexible. But it's not something I use as much as I probably should do. There's a lot of times I think I probably should have brought it, or I'll devise little plans in certain swims. But by the time I get there on nightfall, it's just not another thing I want to be sort of piecing together. And
how long is it?
It is. Oh, dude, I don't know. I've got probably 16 meters, maybe. It depends how many sections I wanted to make. Anything above that, it's unmanageable because it's too flexible.
If you look back, probably the most proficient anglers are the match anglers, and that's what they're doing all the time, really.
Mm-hmm.
They're tipping off a pole, aren't they?
Yeah, little cut.
Other than the small waters, where they're fishing little feeder rods for the carp and things, the normal method I see everywhere is poles and a cup and tipping it in. It's as accurate as it gets.
See, what I don't get...
And consistent.
Yeah, what I don't understand, I've got no idea on your stance on this, Shaun, but for me, that seems like, a perfectly acceptable form of angling. Having a long pole and then a bait spoon on the end, tipping it out. That seems like, I would class that as decent angling. Yet if it was a bait boat that was essentially doing exactly the same thing, for whatever reason, I wouldn't knock anyone for it. Everyone, do whatever makes you happy. But for me, I just wouldn't feel like that was quite cricket. And I don't know why. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Shaun.
I've managed to go 43 years without using a bait boat. I don't get my eye horse about it. I don't like to see them on the lake. I'd rather people didn't use them, but it's a generation we're in now. It's people do. To me, a lot of the things that you practice to get good at is out the window when somebody's got a boat at the side of you. And I think you can have too many shortcuts.
Yeah. I agree. What about long bait poles?
I've not really got an issue with that.
Yeah.
But a long bait pole isn't going to be going more than, I don't know. Perhaps they do use them really long, but you summed it earlier saying that 16 meter is about as much as you can manage. I'm sure people can perhaps push to 20 or whatever, and perhaps more, but they ain't going to be 200 yards, 6 inches away from an island. You're a lot more limited to what you can do with a pole.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I just find it interesting. I'm anti-technology. We had on the half and from the deeper sonar on the podcast.
Right.
And I struggle to get on board with technology in carp angling, even though I know that's massively hypocritical because I use a bite alarm, and a receiver. So I know it. I'm, really pot and kettle, but I just find it hard to get on board with the technology.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's very difficult because you can.
Again, it's something I mean, they used them on the local lake and they scare the fish. A great big bloody golf ball going out there. And there was a classic one. I'm not sure if it was last season or the season before. I was in the corner of the lake, started getting a bit of activity on the bobbin, started getting a few liners, fish had moved in. And somebody moved in at the side of me with one, straight to the front of the swim, cast one out, never had a twitch after that. Just everything departed on one cast. And what we started getting on the local now as well is anglers turning up in the winter and going around the lake, swim until they find something. And generally, they've just stopped the fish from feeding for the rest of the day. They just spooked them all around the lake.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I suppose they would argue that, well, you'd do that with a marker float. And I guess that would be their argument.
Yeah, but you don't tend to go around the whole lake, do you? And you've never got a quiet corner to move into once one's been around with one. Yeah, but it's the old fuddy-duddy in me. It's again, I don't like the easy shortcuts.
No,
it's perhaps a mildness in me because I've had to do it the hard way, the long way round. But I could use any of these things if I wanted, but I've really got no interest in using one. I don't want to use one. But again, hypocritical because I've got no issues of going out in a normal boat.
Yeah.
And I've used echo sounders on normal boats. So, it's a very difficult one to argue. So, I don't do. I just, I still prefer to stand on the bank and cast them. And not be certain if the fish are there or not. I don't really want to know they're not there.
Yeah. That's the thing. I don't even think it's you being an old fuddy-duddy. I'm, a fair bit younger than you, I think, in the most respectful way possible. And
I'm closer to 60 than 50.
Yeah. And it just, something doesn't sit right with it. It seems you're taking the soul out of it a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. You're kind of detaching. You're throwing some technology in there that shouldn't be there. You're detaching yourself from this organic thing that should be you and the fish and the water. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the drone situation, where they're sending them up to look for fish. Again, to me, it's past the boundary. It's they seem to be getting more and more common, but I don't want to see. I want to think I've got it right, even if I haven't. I don't want to confirm to myself there's nothing in my swim.
But I mean, climb a tree. You climb a decent tall tree and you got the sunlight at the right angle, you can see a ridiculous amount into that. I mean, I fish very clear waters. If you fish in a clear water, you can see a tree. You really can.
Well, I used to fish a water called Murphy's in Leicester, and your car was as close to you as you wanted it to be. There weren't a lot of climbable trees there, but I just used to stand on the roof of the Land Rover. I used to find the fish every single trip like that. But to me, that's manpower. That's you doing it. It's not relying on, something sending a signal back to your telephone or whatever.
Yeah.
It's your own eyeballs finding them.
100%.
Your own efforts.
Yeah. Me and Pete used to do the same thing. We briefly fished a water called Rotalic, and I used to drive my little Peugeot, God knows what it was, 205, I think, back then. We used to drive that up to the water's edge, stand on top of that. Perfect. And, you find it. But it just seems a bit more organic, doesn't it? But there we go.
But again, like I say, it's very difficult ones to argue because we all, both said, we do things that are similar anyway.
Yeah.
So I'll use a boat. I still try and cast, but I've got no issues baiting up from a boat.
No, me neither. Yeah. No, I've got no problem rowing my rigs out on a big water. I mean, what's that all about? It's odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is odd. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got to accept that generations coming into it now, it's the norm. It's not something to debate whether they should do it or not. It's what people do, or what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Sadly, it's a different pastime to what I took up originally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regarding sort of like your time at Nash Tackle, were you involved with any of the sort of the tackle innovation side of things, or was it purely bait?
No, there was one or two tackle items that came up with ideas and bounced them about with Kevin, and they ended up in production. One of the ones was Medicarp. Chris Sun's Clinic had recently been released, and I was sent some to try out. I was fishing Baston Fen at the time, and I'd landed a fish, and its mouth was bleeding a little bit. It was very, very snaggy water. That was very weedy, so you had to pressure the fish a little bit. And I thought I'd try the Medicarp. And I put some in its mouth, and I couldn't really see where it had gone, so I squirted a bit more in. And suddenly the carp went balmy. It just went ridiculous on the mat, and it fetched the scale off. And I thought, well, that's defeated the object a bit. I'm trying to help this fish, and I've ended up causing more damage than before. And I sorted the fish out, and I started thinking about it, as I tend to do when something's not gone right. And this liquid had obviously gone down its throat and irritated it, or got on taste buds or whatever, but something had sent it crazy. And I thought, well, why is it liquid? Surely a gel would be better, that you can, you know where you're putting it, you can see where you're putting it. And I thought, if you put a dye in it as well, you can really see what you're doing with it then. And then I was also aware, like gas doesn't actually smell. It's given a smell, so it's gas. And I thought, it doesn't need a disinfectant. Why don't you put a fruit flavour on it? Something nice. And I was bouncing these things about in my head, and I rung Kevin the next day when I got back to work, and I told him what I was thinking about, a gel with a colour in it so you can see where you've put it, and a nicer smell that you don't mind being on your fingers. And he had a chemist working for him at the time, and I think 2 days later, the first bottle of Medicarp arrived on my desk. So, it was an idea from myself. Obviously, I didn't produce it, I didn't manufacture it or come up with a formula, but, that was the start of one.
Mm-hmm.
A few other things. Daddy Longlegs chair that nearly every company seems to have now.
Yeah.
I'd been over to see Kevin, and I was fishing on the cops. I get the cops and the church mixed up. I was on one of his lakes, very cold night, and was talking to him, and I was saying that, carp angling used to be a young man's sport, but people are getting on a bit now. I suppose everybody's still doing these tiny chairs, though, that, some of the older lads struggling to get out of. If you thought about doing a bigger chair. And give him his due, he used to act on these things, and the first Daddy Longlegs came out. Excuse me. Same night, I mentioned about, I said earlier on about the best things to keep you warm is feather or fur, or, wool. And I was talking to him about duck down stuff, the mountaineers whose lives are dependent on keeping warm and keeping themselves together. They all use duck down stuff, and give him his due. It took a little bit longer, that one, but he acted on that. And the first down stuff that was available in the tackle trade came from Kevin. Probably one that was a massive one, and sadly no one benefited the same from. The safety clip. I had a fish at Murphy's, which I mentioned earlier, standing on the Land Rover roof, and I'd hooked a fish in the edge, and it took off, and the lead had discharged from the swivel, but it was still on the clip, and it was snagged. And I ended up playing a fish. It took loads and loads of line off me. It was one that we used to actually call the animal. But, excuse me, I'm sorry. Eventually, I've netted this fish with the lead stuck all the time. It had come free in the end. And at one stage of the fight, I think the lead was in the tip ring and the fish was like a 70 odd yard out. So it just wasn't a safety lead thing to me. And after I landed that, again, it was a problem that needed sorting. And I thought about it and I started thinking, well, why does lead need to pop off? If lead's popping off the swivel, it's stopping the lead popping off the peg. You know, it needs to be more fixed than that. So I come up with an idea of a hole in it and tying it in place with sort of £1.5 line, just to make it a bit tighter. Or you could alter the braking strength suit. I spoke to Kevin the following day about it, and again, a few days later, I'd got leg clips with holes in and pegs so you could lock them in place. And again, it's another thing that, you know, nearly every company's got one of those.
That's quite an important bit of innovation really in carp fishing, because everyone uses them. So that's pretty cool.
I mean, you know, I've got to take my hat off to Kevin. You know, it's him who did everything, but you know, it's the bouncing about of ideas and having somebody you can talk openly to. You know, some things I'd suggest, and he'd develop it on a lot further. You know, he'd make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's quite a lot of things in the tackle trade that I was quietly behind. But at the time, I just used to get a kick out of seeing it on the shelves and knowing that, you know, I was part responsible for it or had a part in it. You know, it never used to be this scenario of, you know, I want 10% for that or I want a retainer for that or anything else. I was just proud to see the product up there. There's one or two bits and bobs with the bait. When Nash Bait first started, it teamed up with Rod Hutchinson for a while, and Catchem became Catchem 88. It didn't work between them, so split ways. So Kevin decided to start Nash Baits, and Rod Hutchinson started Rod Hutchinson basically. And the Nash Bait range initially was to be just the pick of the best of the Catchem stuff, you know, because it was a massive range, the Catchem range was. And the thing he didn't have was base mixers. And at the time I was catching a lot of fish on a base mix made with yellowbird food ingredients and such like. And he basically came to me and asked me if I wanted to go his way rather than Hutchinson's side, and put a deal together for me in the days when people didn't get sponsored. And suddenly, it was something I couldn't really say no to. You know, he offered to roll the bait for me. I could use what I wanted and this, that, and the other, as well as tackle. But the condition of it, he wanted to release the base mix that was being used. And, you know, no big deal to me. I think the Monster Pursuit was one of them. I think that was Rob Malin's. There was a strawberry mix. That was one of Kevin's. So all the initial base mixes, there was all, you know, something that one or the other of the sponsored anglers was catching well on. But it was quite nice. The Amber Attract, that ended up in the range for years and years after some of the others had dropped away.
Yeah, I've got very fond memories of the Amber Attract.
Great winter bait.
Yeah, the strawberry.
Great leakage and everything else.
Were you involved with the so-called palatants, which were basically flavors on an oil base?
No, I've been quite. I get when I've got things at work, I'm not one that swaps and changes and tinkers with things a lot. And I think there's only ever Formula One, which was one of the Nash baits. That's the only bait I can remember catching carp on that hasn't been my own bait, that I haven't put together, sort of thing.
In the sting oil, I mean, obviously that's no longer produced. That's long gone, isn't it?
I don't know if they use it or not. I mean, I still use the same blend in the Raja Spice that we do in Quest baits. Yeah, it's a great blend, you know. It always will be used in one bait or another, you know.
Are you able to share that blend? I think the answer.
No. No, it was a strange one though. That with on the amber extract, no actual flavours at all, just the essential oil and the base mix. The eels didn't like it. I mean, eels aren't the pests now that they used to be. They're quite endangered. But when I was on Patswell Church Pool, you couldn't actually fish boilies through the summer. You only got a brief period in the colder winter months when you could use boilies because of the eels. Yeah, they didn't touch that. They didn't like it at all. So it was a massive edge that was. I was one of the first people to be able to boilie fish it in the warmer months, which meant I was one of the few people who could fish more than 25 yards out. Because people weren't, people used to talk about spods and things back then, but in reality, you didn't see people using them. So it was all catapulted particles as far as you could catapult them. But no, that was a massive edge at the time. I'd not put the bait together to avoid eels. It was just a lucky scenario. They didn't like it.
Yeah. That sting oil was something special, wasn't it? I mean, that at the time, I think that did quite well, didn't it?
Yeah. Like I say, I still use it to this day. I've messed about with bait a lot, and with the bait company and things, and looking at different things. But it still remains in the biggest selling bait we do.
Which bait's that? Just out of interest.
Roger Spice.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the few that's been going since day one as well. We've had to drop various ones off over the years if the sales aren't up there, and bring new things out. Of course, when you bring something new out, you need to make space anyway. But no, the Roger Spice has been there since, like I say, since day one.
Was that your first bait, or did you have another one before that?
I mean, when launched Quest Baits, it was very much on the back of what I knew and what I'd used over the years anyway, things that I knew worked. The story behind it, sort of getting into bait and everything, was quite a weird one. I'd been at the shop for 25 years, like I say, and I wasn't totally happy in the end. I wasn't settled in the end, and I knew I needed to do something else. And all I knew was the tackle trade. I've never been anywhere other than the tackle trade. And I'd had various ideas what I perhaps could have done. It was one day I was in the shop, and we used to get a lot of insurance claims back then. And this guy had come in, and if he'd had all his gear stolen or not is anyone's guess, because most of them hadn't. But he's replacing all his gear, and I ended up with him and went through, and he's like, looking at rods, and he said, "What do you use?" And I was using amorphouses at the time. I use these, so I'll have a set of them. Then went along to reels, and I use SS3000. I'll have some of them, and it went like that all the way through, and it was quite silly. I could have told him I was using anything, and I'll have that. But I said to him at one stage, says, "I hope I never go anywhere where you're fishing, because I'm going to end up going in your bivvy." Just everything he had was what I was using, which was a nice compliment. But then it came to bait, and he said to me, "What do you use?" And I said, And suddenly, alarm bells in my head, and I thought, I can't honestly pick up off the shelf what I use. Because as I said earlier on the Kevin Nash sponsorship, he used to roll what I asked him to roll, or Gary Bays. And I'd always use my own things, other than, like I say, Formula One. I did catch quite a few fish on. And I finished serving this customer, and to the life of me, I wish I could remember who it was. Everything was a blank and a haze after that, because I was starting this bait company in my head of selling what I actually use. What I can honestly say, hand on heart, you'll catch fish on that. Yet, out of all the bait we sold at the shop, there was none of it I used to pick up off the shelf and use. So that's where Quest came from, really. Was suddenly having something that I felt I could offer a bit better than what else was out there.
So that's integrity in the highest order. So basically what you're saying is, because you couldn't thoroughly answer that man's question, you felt that you needed to go out on a limb, create your own bait company, and sell it to the masses.
Yeah, it was suddenly, it was the first proper gap I'd noticed where everyone else wasn't doing it, or in my mind wasn't. You know, I felt as though I could offer a little bit more than was possibly being offered. Now, that's totally unfair to a lot of companies because there's always been some great bait companies out there. But I didn't have anything in the shop that I was happy to just pick up and use. Yeah, everything else was, you know, hooks, rods, reels, line, everything, you know, totally happy with it all, but not bait.
And that says it all, doesn't it? Thing is, you can have the best rod going, best reel going, this line that's super supple and all this, that, and the other. If the carp isn't wanting to suck up that bait, everything else is irrelevant, isn't it?
Yep, totally. Yeah.
But people will spend.
But it's still the thing people skimp on.
Yeah, I was just going to say they'll spend a bloody fortune on everything but bait. That's where they want to save a 50p or whatever.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. You won't believe some of the phone calls I get. It's, what's the cheapest you can do me 25 kilo boilies for? Well, what you after? Well, cheapest. And they I don't know. I really should do a cheap bait just to satisfy them, but I can't bring myself to doing it.
You can't. You shouldn't do. I don't think you should do. No.
No, but that's a little bit of history of quest baits as well. I don't know if I've told that one, I don't think I've said that one before, about where it actually originated from. It was good timing at the time as well. There was an opportunity occurred as well with old silent partner scenario, and it got launched. It happened.
Yeah, I mean, Quest Baits has stood the test of time. When was that first incorporated?
I went full time on Quest Baits in 2005, so 15 years ago.
Okay, I thought it was earlier than that.
No, obviously there was a period setting things up and getting ready to hand me notes, because obviously I had to do it on the quiet. I couldn't let anyone know what I was doing or anything. So there was a lot of prep work, getting things in place. But no, 2005 was when I went full time on it.
Yeah. Which by that time you were well into your writing, weren't you?
Well, I started writing in 1987.
Yeah.
That was when the first articles were published. I think I had my first series in 1989. I think it was. And I've written lots of different names over the years in quite a few different countries as well. But sadly, that all changed. It ended up that nobody had got any money to pay anybody, and the only way I could get articles published was swapping for adverts, which I never made any secret about it. I used to write for a bit of back pocket money, basically. Always declared everything's always gone through the books and such like. But to me, in the 25 years I had at the shop, the only overtime I could do would mean not going fishing. So that was never going to happen. So I started writing. It was just an extra way of earning a little bit. The tackle trade has never been a trade where you earn lots of money. There's a few exceptions on some of the really big companies, but it was a case of the diesel money used to come through the writing.
Yeah.
And sad sign of the times, most of the magazines aren't there anymore.
They're not, no.
But it seemed to me, sort of looking in, they ended up with, what appeared to be happening was you'd get a big company, would buy 16 pages or whatever, and they'd supply their sponsored anglers as writers. So really, they're buying the advertising and supplying the writers. So you end up with a situation where you got anglers writing rather than writers fishing, or want of a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
And nearly everything seemed to be advertorials in the end, or a majority of stuff did. And no, you get quite disillusioned with it, really, from a scenario of people wanting your stuff to suddenly, well, we'll have it, but we can't pay you.
Yeah. It's a different world now for sure, isn't it? I suppose.
Well, everything's online now anyway, isn't it? But
Yeah, it is changing. I think it's changing humans at a core level. I don't want to get too deep on that, but I really think it is. But certainly in the context of angling, it is changing the way people angle and the way people learn or maybe don't learn how to fish. I think it
Yeah.
changed a lot. I really do.
well, I think the normal thing now, I'm not the same in anything else. It's if I want to know something, my first protocol is YouTube.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'll watch somebody do it. Yet we criticise people for that.
Mm-hmm.
But, if I want to go and do a job on I don't know what to do. If I want to know how to cut a tree down or whatever, I'll go and watch how you do it.
Yeah.
Or if I need to do something on the car, I'll go and watch someone do it before I do it.
Quickest way to learn is not how to, you read about it. No, it's to watch someone do it firsthand. And in this day and age of recorded video, we can go on the internet and it's like having someone next to you do it in real life. And that's how you learn the best, by watching, and listen. All those senses come in.
Well, I'm quite guilty as well. And when Questbait started, we spent a fortune on videos, on films when you was using actual TV type cameras. And it's so cheap to do nowadays, yet I hardly do any of it now. Yeah, it was quite at the forefront. I remember Pete Castle commented to me once, he had a look at one of the videos and he just couldn't believe how many views it had had. But it's because we were there early, was there at the start of it, yet I don't know, it's the way forward and I probably need to pull my finger out a bit more, but it's never been so easy to do either.
Pete Castle, is he still? He was quite in the limelight at one point, wasn't he? Is he still going?
Yeah, still does. I notice on social media he's doing photography courses and things for anglers, and it still does a bit of filming and photography about. I think I'm not sure exactly what he does do. I think he's got something at Dynamite happening as well.
Right.
I think he works there a little bit. I think he's got a little bit of a mixed package, Yeah, but I keep seeing him crop up everywhere.
Yeah.
Obviously spent quite a lot of time with him in the Free Spirit days. He did a lot of filming back then.
Yeah.
Well, he works at Free Spirit full time. Excuse me.
Are you still involved with them?
I have been since day one, since before there was any rods, actually. Right from the meeting stages and seeing if we thought it could happen. Yeah, it was set up totally different to all the other tackle companies. It was basically Simon Bond, who owns it. He'd spent a lot of years at Shimano, then he spent a few years at Fox, and decided to do it himself in the end, thus the name Free Spirit.
Yeah.
And to fund it, he chose what he considered to be I can't remember if it were 10 or 12 shops now, the best ones in the country, and the shops basically bought into it and got it launched. Yeah,
I think
the rest is history.
Yeah,
that's over 20 years ago now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well over.
Like I say, I've been there since day one. Been involved since day one. I still work on a daily basis for them as well in one of my roles.
I think the name personifies the ethos of the company, doesn't it? But it probably personifies, your kind of ethos as well, doesn't it, Shaun?
That's why I could have gone various ways when Free Spirit started. I remember the first show we ever did. I don't know if you go to the shows at all. If you look how big the Free Spirit stand is now, it makes me smile every time. The first one we did, there was myself, Lee Jackson, and Simon Bond. We had the smallest table you could have, and sort of 9 rods there, open to be took serious. And you look at it now, and it's a very, very successful company. But again, it's another one of those things I've got a lot of pride in. I've been there since day one, hung in there, which is me altogether. A very loyal type person on things, but it's you find the right thing, and why would you jump ship?
Yeah. Do you have any regrets in your angling life?
Not travelling more when the rigs were still new. You know, when a lot of people still weren't on the hair rig and start the bolt rigs. Because carp were very easy to catch, and I could have had an incredibly interesting album if I'd have ventured a bit further afield back in the day. Other regrets are not having decent cameras in the early days. You know, a lot of captures aren't there to look back on. But not many regrets, no. No, I've said for a long while now, if I went under a bus tomorrow, I'm proud of most things I've done. You know, I've done a lot more than a lot of people get to do.
Definitely. On that note, I think we should round up. Is there any?
Yeah.
It sounds very cheesy. But is there any message you'd like to leave anglers of today? What bit of wisdom would you really want to pass on to people?
I think more than wisdom, the etiquette is a much more important thing. And one thing I'd say to lots of people, try and act the same way as you'd want someone next door to you to be acting. You know, I think there's a lot to just catch at any cost and sod everyone else and such like nowadays. And you know, people need to just think about other people a little bit more.
I couldn't agree more. Pete, are you still there? Do you want to
I'm still here.
My glass of whiskey's still here as well. It's hardly touched.
Have you drunk much? Have you drunk much?
No, not topped it up, and there's still no.
Crikey.
No.
Yeah.
That's probably why I'm choking. I've caught COVID whilst I've been talking. I've not coughed for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I think I've had about 3 bouts of it tonight.
You've definitely got that from Sam, not me.
Yeah, well, it's got to snook down the telephone if I have.
That's it. I'm sure you're all right, Shaun. I hope so.
Well, if I'm not, I said earlier I've had a good life, so yeah, not knocking it.
No, you're fine. Stop it. Come on. Well, Shaun, thank you so much for coming on for a part 2. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure the listeners have. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Enjoyed it.